Manhood Perfectly Restored. By Civiale Remedial Agency. To the reader. It is with great pleasure that we send you a copy of this, the 6th edition of our brochure on sexual and urinary diseases. The success of the Civiale urethral method, since its first introduction into America, has been almost unparalleled in medical history, and we feel that the time has come for replacing the brief pamphlet containing a mere outline of the method, with a work somewhat more full and exhaustive. Aware of the number of worthless and oftentimes actually injurious remedies that are being advertised and recommended for the cure of these affections, and the bogus doctors and worthless firms that infest every large city, we have endeavored to give inquiring patients every proof and assurance of the efficacy of the Civiale remedies, every facility for investigating our methods, and proving, to their entire satisfaction, both the medical ability of our consulting staff, and the honor, honesty, and fair dealing of the agency. We court the fullest and freest investigation, either by patients themselves or any friends of theirs in the city, either of whom we shall be happy to see and satisfy at any time, at our consulting rooms, business offices, or manufactory. Repeated trials in some of the most severe cases of spermatorrhea and impotency, in both France and America, have proven the Civiale remedies to be safe, speedy, and most satisfactory in all their results, and we feel justly proud of having in our hands so excellent and efficient a means for the radical cure of so obstinate, serious, and often dangerous a disease. We take pride in having saved many a young and promising life, in having often stayed the hand bent upon self-destruction, and in having many times cheated the grave or the insane asylum of its expected prey. Nor do we feel less proud in having been able, in cases of not so serious, though often of a more embarrassing nature, to restore to full sexual power and vigor middle-aged and older men whose desire had outlived their power, or who, through early abuse, had become so weakened our crayons are inserted without pain, as to be totally impotent, incapable of perpetuating their species, ashamed, discomfited, and disappointed at being somewhat less than a man. Our crayons are inserted without pain. As every case cured is the very best advertisement that we can have, it is hardly necessary for us to say that we endeavor to exercise the utmost care, skill, and discretion in both diagnosing and treating these cases, and assiduity and scientific accuracy in preparing and compounding those remedies of which we are the fortunate possessors. Indeed, we do everything in our power to make success an absolute certainty. A word in closing. Our staff of consulting physicians is composed of men selected with great care for their special skill and attainments in this special branch of medical science. These gentlemen are handsomely remunerated for their services, and take a pride and interest in every case they treat. Staff of consulting physicians. Our physicians hold no pecuniary interest in the agency, and hence prescribe for each case solely on its merits, having nothing to gain by selling less or more to any one under their care. They see and treat each case solely and wholly from a medical standpoint, and hence are never influenced by any pecuniary considerations whatsoever. However great the reputation of our physicians may be, we have, from the first organization of this institution, taken and held the ground that the best interest of the patient is best served by resolutely divorcing the medical from the business department. Civiale Remedial Agency. Mailing and shipping departments, business offices, consulting rooms. 174 Fulton Street, New York. Opposite St. Paul's Church. Office and consulting hours. 8 to 12 a.m. 1 to 6 p.m. Sundays, 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. 2. We cure where a cure is possible. The Civiale Urethral Treatment. Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Spermatorrhea, Impotency, Sterility. The baneful effects and consequences of masturbation, marriage excesses, venereal and urinary diseases on boys and men. Could we read the heart of every man and boy we pass upon the street, how few, how very few, there are that would not reveal sickening pictures of lust, disease, melancholy, and insanity. Charnel houses of sin and lust, sloughs of despond and regret, excess of passion offset by lack of power, dread, despair, hopelessness, shame, and desperation, making a picture of misery scarcely to be conceived by any but those unfortunate beings who in the thoughtless, careless heyday of youth, or the reckless reliance on more mature vigor, have weakened, emasculated and enslaved themselves by indulgences and excesses that have borne fruit of misery, disease, and desperation in after years. How little the youth who, in his ignorance of the terrible consequences of his vice, steals away to the secrecy of his chamber or his bed, leaving his happy, healthy, and playful companions, in order that he may let the hot waves of lust and passion run riot in his mind, and dry up every spring of healthy thought and action. How little does he think of the aftertime of misery and exhaustion that he is bringing upon himself! How little does he think that the vile demon that he is raising up will, like the vampire, suck his very life-blood, steal away his strength and life and vivacity, besmirch and weaken his mind, take the strength from his muscles, the courage from his heart, sap the very foundation of his existence, unsex and unnerve him, render him feeble, wavering, and imbecile, dog his footsteps to the very steps of the altar, to curse and blacken and disappoint those joys of parentage and marital right that should be his. The shadow deepens with him as life advances, and follows him, bringing shame and misery and despair at every step, until the poor victim, driven too far, sinks into an early grave by disease or suicide, or is lost to the world and to all joys and friends behind the doors of an insane asylum. He died of no disease known to medical science. He simply faded away, weaker, more nerveless, and hopeless day by day. He faded away until, almost before anyone knew it, the grave yawned to receive him. Poor, miserable, hopeless wreck! Poor suicide! For his own sin and crime were the real causes of his death. How many such there are at the present day! We meet them on the street, in business, and at church. Our insane asylums are full of them. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Find their wives unfaithful or unhappy, and their offspring, when they are cursed with any, poor, miserable, weak fledglings, with aged, wasted faces, water on the brain, with rickets and softening of the bones, idiots or imbeciles, dying early and scarcely regretted even by the parent whose progeny they are, for every wail of the little suffering voice pierced his heart and reminded him of his lustful sin and passionate, inexcusable indulgence that caused all this misery. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Alas, how true! How indisputable! The imperative laws of nature once broken, the consequences are inevitable. Of late years it has become the fashion amongst certain men to scoff at this terrible vice of secret indulgence, and to claim that its evil effects are overrated, are portrayed too vividly. Ask some poor unfortunate whose confidence you may succeed in gaining, and listen to the pitiful tale of lost health and vitality he will tell you. Mark well the wasted hand, the putty-like skin, the black-ringed, lackluster eyes, the heavy lip, the labored breath. Read the consequences of his sin and crime in his shamefaced way, his shambling gait, his nerveless hands, his fluttering heart, his weakened muscles, and his tottering memory and mind. Must he needs lie dead at our feet before these skeptics can be convinced? Is not such a state a living death? Must these men visit him in the cell of the asylum, watch him as a raving maniac, gaze upon him as a hopeless idiot or a driveling imbecile, before they will be convinced? Such proof is at hand. Not an asylum in any country but has its score of such, not an asylum record book but chronicles the sad histories of thousands of these poor, lost creatures, male and female. Not an asylum nurse or doctor but will sadly point out these creatures to you, bereft of every trace of reason, all sense of shame, still practicing the horrible vice that has driven every semblance of humanity from their faces, and the very light of reason from their eyes. True, every boy or man who practices this vice does not come to this end. But who shall discriminate? There are thousands such, and who shall say which it shall be, or at what moment it shall occur? Ah! Happy, rosy-cheeked boy, so gay and thoughtless now, so free from misery, disease, and care, beware! It may be your turn next. A little thoughtless indulgence, the imitation of friend or companion, though apparently harmless now, may blanch your rosy cheek, destroy your peace and happiness of mind, and make a lifelong, hopeless, suffering invalid of you, may shut the door of all earthly enjoyment in your face, blast your hopes, disease or destroy your offspring, alienate you from friends and family, and cut off from all communion with your race, make you an object of shame and disgust to your fellow men, sink you into an early grave, or entomb you for life in the cold, stony walls of a lunatic asylum. The day will come, erstwhile, when you will curse the parents who reared you, the friends who surrounded you, and the teachers and ministers who taught you, for not warning you of the terrible nature of this indulgence, so secretly common amongst boys and young men. The day will come, when in the midst of your mental, moral, and physical agony, with weakened mind and exhausted body, physicians will tell you that when you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. Masturbation is practically harmless, that its consequences are exaggerated, and that your sufferings are mostly imaginary. Then will you pity their ignorance and bemoan the fact that to such men must sufferers in your terrible extremity apply without any feeling of being understood, appreciated, or sympathized with, and far less, relieved or cured. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. Happy will you be then, if you can, with your vice and misery staring you in the face and threatening you with some or all of its dire consequences, direct your steps to those who not only can and will sympathize with you, but who are able to aid you with proper remedies and restoratives and set you safely on the way to health and happiness again. For there are proper aids and remedies. There are hope and happiness to be obtained if the affections growing out of this vice be skillfully taken in hand in time. None but the hopeless sufferers who have been lifted from the misery, shame, and weakness of their self-inflicted suffering know how much this world owes to the high medical skill, exhaustive study, and persistent search for truth and proper remedies of those two great Frenchmen, Professors Claude Lallemand and Jean Civiale. The medical as well as civil honors conferred upon them by their country, and their medical brethren, great as they were, could never half repay them for the good they rendered thoughtless youth and suffering manhood by their special discoveries. There can be no question but that the Civiale Urethral Crayons, named thus after this great specialist, and endorsed by the most eminent medical men of France, that country in which lust and passion are peculiarly prevalent, are the most far-reaching and reliable specifics for generative, sexual, and nervous diseases known. Causes of spermatorrhea and impotency. Self-abuse not the only cause. Many years' experience in the treatment of these debilitating diseases has proven very surely that there are many causes besides self-abuse, self-pollution, secret vice or masturbation, for spermatorrhea, impotency, and debility or lost manhood. Self-abuse is the most common cause, and we therefore give it the most prominence. The others we will name briefly in about the order of their frequency. 1. Marriage excesses. A very common cause, more often producing impotency, loss of sexual desire or power, and sterility, inability to beget offspring, then spermatorrhea, loss of vital fluid, daily and nightly losses, losses in the urine, nervous prostration, debility, insanity, paralysis, and c. For full description of symptoms, see pages 12 to 16. Sexual desire was given to mankind, like any other power or appetite, to be enjoyed in reasonable moderation and for the purpose of ensuring a continuance of our species by the birth of offspring. Many men abuse this power, abuse it inordinately, shamefully, and suffer the consequences. This is especially true of the newly married, and men advanced in years, who push their failing powers too far. As a just retribution for the abuse of so important a function, the Almighty deprives some of desire, some of power, some of both. 2. Onanism. By many this is confused with masturbation or self-abuse. While like it in some respects, and in many of its consequences, it is still different. It is as hurtful to an adult as abuse is to a young person. We cure where a cure is possible. God punished Onan for this sin, hence its name. Yet, despite this terrible example so plainly set forth in the Old Testament, probably 1/2 of the married men of the present day are pursuing it, and hence so many impotent and powerless persons, seeking vainly amongst the many cheap, quack remedies for something to reinvigorate and revitalize them. We cure where a cure is possible. This is a terrible vice, terrible in its consequences, and however hardy and robust a man, sooner or later his sexual powers must and will succumb to the strain. Many men write us, saying that they never masturbated, and yet are totally impotent, and cannot understand why it is. And yet they have been thus injuring themselves for years. Sexual power and desire were given us for one purpose, the perpetuation of our species, and whoso endeavors to avoid this, must suffer, Many married couples do not want more children, from care, poverty, or other causes, and hence the extent to which this terrible practice is indulged. It must be from ignorance, for were it commonly known how injurious this practice is, but few would dare take the terrible risk. And yet the resulting weakness can be speedily cured if properly treated. In no class of cases have the Civiale remedies achieved greater success than in these. 3. Anything debilitating, such as overwork, confinement, sedentary occupations, worry, care, excitement, and c. These are much more common causes of sexual and generative diseases than is generally supposed, and usually very obstinate and difficult to treat, because the system is so run down that there is very little stamina or vitality to rely upon. Clerks, businessmen, lawyers, bankers, ministers, and students are very subject to this form of impaired vital and sexual power. Theological students are very prone to it. Many do not have any idea as to what their real trouble is, and lose much valuable time in doctoring for dyspepsia, consumption, neurasthenia, and the like, when really their very life and vitality are oozing away from them in their urine or otherwise. 4. Women's, or venereal, diseases. Gonorrhea, clap, gleat, stricture, injury to the urine canal from the rough use of sounds, bougies, catheters, and c. Any one or all of these, by extending the inflammation backward to the seminal ducts and neck of the bladder, may cause either spermatorrhea or impotency. Indeed, stricture, often caused by self-abuse, is one of the most common causes of these complaints. It was here that Lallemand and Civiale found the keynote of the true treatment of these diseases. 5. Varicocele, or a wormy, swollen, or twisted state of the veins in the bag, and of those that run down to the testicles, is a very common cause of both spermatorrhea, impotency, and debility. For full description of this very common and often unexpected disease, send for our illustrated pamphlet on the subject, or see Chapter 11, page 44 of this book. No man or boy with varicocele, no matter how it was produced, can be perfectly sound and strong in his sexual organs. 6. Undeveloped, wasted, or misshapen parts. A failure to have perfectly developed organs sometimes dates from birth, but in most cases it is caused by self-abuse at a time when the person is growing. In any case, seminal weakness and wasted or misshapen parts go together. We offer special help to impotent men, as both cause and effect, and the one, when found, will usually very soon lead to the other. Twisting or curving is one of the most positive signs of previous inflammation, stricture, and twisting or distortion of the seminal ducts, and hence sterility or barrenness. In such especially are the remarkable effects of the Civiale treatment the most noticeable. We can say with positiveness, and prove it by case after case, that by no other method can such rapid and perfect restoration of the organs to a natural and healthy state be obtained as by this. Some of the very worst and apparently most hopeless cases that we have had, cases that have gone from one physician to another without the slightest improvement, have yielded effectually to the Civiale remedies. In some of them the persons thus afflicted would have been totally unfitted for marriage had they failed to find relief. Their children, healthy, happy, and finely developed, speak volumes for what our treatment has done for them. For treatment refer to page 42 of this book. We offer special help to impotent men. Impotent old men, the sexual decay of advancing age. We have thus far given briefly the most common causes of seminal disease. There are a few that we have not mentioned: blows on the head, loins, small of the back, testicles, and c. weakness caused by prolonged illness, fevers, and c. malaria, consumption, and c. the abuse of tobacco, opium, alcohol, and chloral, and c. But these are less common and less important. There is one condition, however, that we have only referred to incidentally, and that is the failure of sexual power in men past middle age. No man, if he is reasonably careful and does not abuse himself, should find his powers decaying before he is 70 or 80 years of age. Mind, we do not say no man does, but no man should, provided he is reasonably careful. But here comes the fact. Most men are not careful, and most men have abused themselves at some period. Many believe and stoutly maintain that they never had emissions or seminal disease, And it didn't hurt them. But it did, and it is just now that they begin to feel it. It is true they escaped the more acute and direful effects, but it told on them in after years. There are many thousands today who are just now feeling the effects of early vices, now almost forgotten. They can be restored to natural power by proper treatment, but they rarely are, because but few of them believe that early self-abuse or later onanism has anything to do with it. So they spend a fortune almost, and uselessly too, on stimulants, nervines, tonic and the like, but still remain partly or wholly impotent. Foolish men! Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The vital fluid. What it is, what it does, and how it is allowed to drain away, weakening, emasculating and dementing the vicious and the careless. Diurnal, daily emissions. Nocturnal, nightly emissions. Impalpable oozings. Losses in the urine. Losses while at stool. Mistaken gleat. There are thousands of weak, nerveless men, who do not know what ails them, thousands of invalids whose physicians are puzzled and perplexed by their symptoms, and cannot account for the rapid waste of strength, energy, strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure, and vitality, much less check it, and thousands of others, on the street, in the pulpit, on the bench, in the counting room, whose troubles, illness and misery are due to losses of vital fluid. Some know it, many more do not. Some are being properly or improperly treated for it. Many are being dosed and drugged for malaria, neurasthenia, consumption, overwork, brain troubles, paralysis, and many equally as foolish and irrational complaints. They sicken, die, destroy themselves in hopeless despair of ever getting well and strong again, verge into hopeless idiocy or go raving mad, simply because their trouble is not understood, because day by day and hour by hour there is draining from them in their urine, at stool and otherwise, that precious vital fluid that represents life, health and energy to them. There. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. Figure 1. A human testicle. Perfectly healthy. From Gray's Anatomy. And is it surprising that the continual losses do drain away strength and vitality? This fluid is the only one charged with life. Actual life. Capable of producing life. Of creating offspring. Of impregnating and developing into perfect being, with thinking and reasoning brain and mind, pulsating heart, expanding lungs, sentient nerves, motive muscle, and all that beautiful, minute and coordinate mechanism that forms a perfect human being, the only secretion in the body capable of propagating species, carrying life within life. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Surely this was not meant for waste. Surely the influence of its loss upon the system, especially of a boy or young man, growing and not fully developed, must be great, and it is. Many and many a young man thus wastes away before the eyes of his friends from no other cause. Many a one loses health and strength from this cause alone, yet does not know it. How much better if all this false modesty, social hypocrisy, and blundering medical dosing and drugging, without thorough examination and full understanding, were wholly done away with, and the young men, and old men too, were brought to understand two cardinal facts. A. The immense devitalizing effects of even small continued losses of vital fluid, and B. The fact that many apparently strong and healthy, as well as weak and nerveless, men who find their sexual powers gradually or suddenly failing them, can, in 9 cases out of 10, trace it directly to losses of vital fluid in the urine or otherwise, that have been going on, perhaps wholly unknown to them, for months or years past. See also chapter on Hidden Spermatoria. Analysis of urine. At the first symptom of sexual decay or nervous exhaustion, the person thus affected should have his urine carefully and thoroughly analyzed by some competent person. In saying competent person, we speak advisedly, for but few chemists and fewer physicians are competent to make such an examination and draw correct deductions from what is to be found there. Any person can, with the proper reagents, test his urine for the presence or absence of semen, but he cannot make the thorough, scientific, chemical and microscopical analysis that is sometimes needed in order to arrive at a full and perfect diagnosis and successful treatment. If losses of semen are taking place in the urine, it would be well to forward a sample of it at once. For a full and extended analysis, our crayons are inserted without paying, which will be made for the nominal fee of $2, merely to cover the cost of chemicals. Our crayons are inserted without paying. Our chemical laboratory is under the supervision of Mr. G. H. E. Dubell, Ph.D., a thoroughly competent quantitative and qualitative analytical chemist, a graduate of the French and German universities and also a licentiate in this country, who, with his able corps of assistants, makes all examinations and reports in full upon them to the medical chief of staff, who in turn submits them with the histories of each to the full consulting board or staff. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The Forms, Symptoms, and Consequences of Masturbation, Spermatorrhea, Nervous Exhaustion, and Spinal Irritability. In no disease known to us are the symptoms precisely the same in every case. They vary with the constitutional peculiarities of the individual. Yet in nearly every case there are certain prominent or leading symptoms, signs, that are rarely absent at some stage of the disease. We give here the more noticeable ones at first laid down by Lallemand, the great French physician, who first gave us the name spermatorrhea, who first wrote upon this disease, who was the first to discover the connection between the losses of semen and certain symptoms here given, and who, too, was the great originator of that treatment so successfully perfected by his successor, Professor Civiale, and which is now the standard treatment, recognized and adopted in all the French hospitals. Objective symptoms due to masturbation. First, as to the appearance and actions of the masturbator, he who is constantly and recklessly drawing drafts of exhaustion and decay on the nervous energy and strength of his coming manhood, and which are sure to bankrupt the most robust health. If there is a man to be pitied on this earth, it is he who is walking about from day to day conscious of being guilty of ever having practiced this vice. Mark the man who is addicted to it in no matter how light a form. His face tells the story of his sin. See his haggard looks, his deep, sunken eyes, which he throws only halfway into the countenance of his friend. Note the blue or black discolorations under the eye, the nervousness to get away from a crowd, and the extreme girlishness or backwardness when introduced into the company of ladies. The victim of the most dangerous of all vices soon reaches a state which, if not promptly relieved by the proper remedy, will end in lifelong misery or an early death. Objectively considered, the masturbator is recognized by a marked facial expression, by a characteristic mannerism, and by a peculiar mental state. We cure where a cure is possible. The face. The facial expression consists of a pale and sallow tint of the skin, unusual development of acne, red pimples, especially on the forehead, a dark circle around the orbits, dilated and sluggish pupils, lusterless eyes, and an oblique line extending from the inner angle of the lids transversely across the cheek to the lower margin of the malar cheek bone. The face has a haggard, troubled, furtive expression. The manner. The manner of the masturbator is peculiar. He is listless, shy, retiring, and easily confused. He avoids society, preferring solitude. There is a want of steadiness and decision in his locomotion. His inferior extremities seem deficient in power, and all his movements betray a mind ill at ease. The mind. His mental operations are confused. His speech is embarrassed, awkward, and without directness. His memory is defective, and he is absent-minded and given to reverie. If the habit has long existed, and been excessively frequent in repetition, epilepsy may be produced, or serious mental disorder, as delusional insanity, dementia, etc., may occur. The sexual organs. The state of the genital organs varies with the length of time the habit has been indulged. In some young subjects, there will be observed an extraordinary development of the organ, owing to premature excitement, but the disproportion is not maintained. Professor Bartholow says, with the progress of the habit the organ becomes small and relaxed, the erections feeble, the corpora cavernosa either waste away or their vessels lose their tonicity, whereby an apparent shrinkage takes place. the corpus spongiosum and the glands also shrink, so that the prepuce, foreskin appears unnaturally elongated. The testes may increase in size, become tender and irritable, or they may waste away to nothing but little strings. The latter is the more usual result. Pains in the small of the back, a sense of weight and aching in the loins, around the anus, and in the testes is experienced. The appetite is capricious, the digestion feeble, and the bowels are constipated, or constipation alternates with diarrhea. The mind is deficient in power of attention, the imagination is constantly pervaded with vague erotic dreams, the moral sense is blunted, and the perceptions are dull and confused. Pains in the head, in the occipital and frontal regions, front and back of head, and a sense of fullness, and in serious cases alarming vertigo, dizziness and falling, pains in the course of the principal nerves, and an extreme nervous susceptibility, are experienced. The organic nervous system manifests a functional disturbance in harmony with the disorder of the nervous system of animal life. Gastralgia and abdominal pain, pain in stomach and bowels, and uneasiness are in some cases very distressing symptoms. The distinctiveness of the foregoing symptoms will be determined by the extent and duration of the habit, and by the constitutional peculiarities of the patient. The more highly developed the nervous system, and the more it preponderates in activity over the muscular and digestive systems, the more serious the effects. We hold out no false hopes. Effects of masturbation on the mind. The most serious mental effects are produced by masturbation. This vice, commenced at or before the period of puberty, interferes seriously with the development of the brain and the evolution of the mental faculties. That spermatorrhea will produce in one class of cases mental disorders, and not in another, indicates either that some predisposition to these disorders existed, or that the habit of self-pollution was merely an expression of mental alienation, insanity. The images which pervade the minds of boys possessed of the highly developed nervous organization of masturbators are those of delusional insanity. There is, however, a cerebral, brain, phase of spermatorrhea which may be separated from the two preceding classes. It is characterized by indistinctness of vision, dilatation of the pupil, amblyopia, nearsightedness, diplopia, double sight, diminution in the sensitiveness of the auditory apparatus, deafness, feebleness of voice, mental preoccupation, habitude of mind, confusion of ideas, and a profound melancholy. The termination of such cases is in suicidal monomania, delusional insanity, etc. In that variety of the cerebral form in which a decided predisposition must be admitted to exist, to disorder of the intellectual faculties, there are found various forms of mental alienation. The chronic form is the most common, which corresponds to the melancholia of Pinel, or the lipomania of Esquirol, terminating in dementia. Several of the most characteristic cases which have happened under my observation correspond to the delusional insanity of Bucknell and Tuke. Manual of Psychological Medicine, Philadelphia. Edition, page 103. Insanity from spermatorrhea. Many writers are disposed to underrate the importance of this tendency in spermatorrhea. The statistics of any of our large insane asylums will illustrate the influence of masturbation in the production of insanity. Mr. Holmes Coote, in a discussion which followed Dr. Drysdale's paper on the medical aspects of prostitution, read before the Harveian Society of London, remarked that he still entertained the opinion that there were no worse evils appertaining to human weakness than this. He had opportunities of witnessing the fact that among the young there was no cause of insanity more common than indulging in habits which he would not further particularize, but which were known to result in the most complete bodily and mental prostration. British Medical Journal, February 17, 1866. Dr. John P. Gray, the distinguished superintendent of the State Asylum at Utica, New York, 24th Annual Report, 1867, thus speaks of the influence of masturbation in the production of insanity. The records of this institution show 521 cases admitted directly attributable to this vice, and I am well convinced that the number is greatly understated. We might add confirmatory testimony from a variety of sources, but the foregoing is sufficient for our purpose. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Important. Peculiar, numb, dead, aching, or tingling sensations in the hands, arms, legs, or feet, and headache and specks before the eyes on stooping or reading, also sleeplessness, sound sleep, and apprehensive dreams should be watched for, and the moment they appear danger from paralysis or insanity is to be apprehended and proper treatment at once taken. These symptoms may mean nothing in some cases, but they are terrible harbingers of ill in others. A case of insanity from self-abuse. Figure 4. The following case, taken verbatim from the care book of the Insane Asylum at Blackwell's Island, will serve as a type of the many to be found in every hospital for the insane in this country. And a terrible and noteworthy fact is, that according to the recent annual reports of these institutions, both in this country and Europe, insanity, idiocy, and dementia from seminal losses and sexual abuses are increasing from year to year. Figure 4. Appearance of James MCC, a few weeks before he died. See below. James MCC, admitted to the asylum 10 days ago. Single, clerk, born in NY State. Was found on 6th Avenue surrounded by a crowd who were attracted by his violent and frantic efforts to destroy everything within his reach. On being arrested and taken to the 29th Precinct Station House, he was recognized by the sergeant on duty at the desk as having been arrested twice before within a week, once for violent shouting and disturbance in the street, and once for an attempt at suicide by drowning. As he had attempted his life by hanging the last time he was locked up, and had afterwards seriously injured himself by trying to dash his brains out, he was adjudged insane, and a watch set on him all night. In the morning, when taken before the magistrate, he was violent and abusive, using the most frightfully obscene and profane language. There he was held for examination and sent to Bellevue in a straitjacket, which was found to be necessary in order to control him. From the padded cell there he was sent here. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. Upon examination he is found to be suffering from acute mania, alternating with periods of intense melancholia in which he invariably attempts to take his own life. His language when excited exceeds in obscenity anything ever heard. During the intervals of quiet he is constantly practicing the vile habit which has undoubtedly been the cause of his insanity. He has lost all sense of shame and continues to practice before visitors, attendants, and physicians. He makes no effort to go to the water closet, and his clothes and cell are in a filthy and disgusting state. Ever since admission he has refused all food, and it has been necessary to feed him with a stomach pump. He is losing flesh and strength every day, and is fast wasting away. From his relatives who have twice called to see him it was learned that his mental trouble came on very suddenly, although his memory and faculties have been failing for some time past. They say that he complained of sleeplessness, numbness, and tingling sensations in the arms and legs, headache, and a peculiar itching of the skin, for months before any distinct symptoms of insanity appeared. They attribute it all to self-abuse, which he has admitted practicing from an early age. August 28th. Is now paralyzed in both lower limbs. Still violent. August 28th. September 3d. Died this morning about 1 a.m. Is so emaciated that he is little more than skin and bones. Rigor mortis entirely absent. Shortly after death the skin of the whole body changed to a dark chocolate hue. September 3d. Truth is often stranger than fiction. What end more terrible than this? Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Spermatorrhea, or lost manhood. Symptoms. Spermatorrhea may be conveniently divided into 3 stages. First stage, irritation, congestion. In this stage the sexual organs of the brain and nervous system first begin to feel the strain of early abuse, overwork, confinement, sexual excess, or whatever the cause may be in this particular case. The prostate gland, J.B., Figure 5, the seminal vesicles, L, Figure 5, Cooper's duct, N, Figure 5, the testicles and spermatic cord, H, F, K, Figure 5, indeed all the sexual apparatus, including the bulbous sympathetic nerves lying just inside the spine, from the small of the back down to the end of the organ, become filled with dark, thick and stagnated blood. The prostate gland swells and becomes enlarged, the seminal vesicles become weak, baggy and filled with a thin, glary fluid that oozes out into the urine and urine canal on any little strain, exertion, or excitement, especially when, after being in the presence of the opposite sex, weak, feeble erections follow. The testicles become flabby and stringy and no longer make strong, healthy, fecund vital fluid. The constant calls upon them has exhausted them, as also the nerves that gave them life, strength, and vitality. A heavy dragging. We offer special help to impotent men. Weight is often felt in the groin, especially after walking or long standing. There is a feeling of weakness and exhaustion in the parts. Often strange sensations shoot through the parts, and they are cold and clammy at one time, while weak and sweating profusely at another. We offer special help to impotent men. Figure 5. The general nervous system also feels the strain and drain. Memory and application, good judgment, decision of character, and clear-sightedness are not what they were. Headaches are not uncommon. Bashfulness and trepidation, especially in the presence of females, is the rule. The person feels clumsy, embarrassed, and ill at ease. Sleep is sometimes poor. There are occasionally terrible dreams, sometimes lascivious ones accompanied by emissions, drowsiness, and a tired, languid feeling in the morning, and a disinclination to rise and go to work are certain signs of impending nervous exhaustion. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. The eyes are dull and heavy, often black-ringed underneath. The pupils of the eyes are unequal, often very large, sometimes one small and one large. The hands tremble and perspire easily. The person is absent-minded, melancholy, prone to brood, and fears the jests or ridicule of his companions. The skin, especially of the face, sometimes becomes coarse and red, sometimes is pale and pasty and covered with blotches or pimples. There is sometimes spasm at the neck of the bladder, causing some delay before the urine will flow freely. Often it is passed in a forked or twisted stream, plainly showing the presence of either organic or spasmodic stricture. Twitching of the muscles of the eyelid, face, and limbs is often present, accompanied sometimes by creeping sensations up the spine, flushings of the face, chills, slight dizziness, and black spots before the eyes on stooping over, and occasionally by neuralgic pains in the head and about the heart. If unchecked, or if the baneful habit is still persisted in, the symptoms of the first stage merge rapidly into those of the second stage. Congestion and inflammation. Here all the symptoms of the foregoing stage are usually present, only somewhat more intensified. The congestion and irritation are more decided, the weakness more marked, the nervous prostration more decided. Many, or all of the following symptoms may be present, according to the degree of severity or the rapidity of the disease. Emissions, day or night, oozing of a glary fluid under excitement and imaginings, presence of the opposite sex, etc., partial and imperfect erections, desire to masturbate, formation of evil pictures in the mind, flushing and chilliness, stupidity and tendency to doze or sleep, mental habitude, failing memory, lack of power of application, energy or concentration, restlessness, pain and smarting in passing urine, wetting the bed, pain in the kidneys, headache, pimples on the face or body, itching or peculiar sensations about the scrotum, bag, thighs, legs, anus, etc., wasting of the organs, stringiness and softening of the testicles, dyspepsia, sluggish bowels, torpid liver, failing sight, pains in the head, front, top and back, chest, limbs, etc., sensation of the bowels falling out, dizziness on stooping over or kneeling, specks before the eyes, erotic dreams, melancholy, developing sometimes into insanity, numbness of arms, hands, feet, or legs, precursors of paralysis, twitchings of the muscles of the eyelids and elsewhere, sometimes ending in epileptic fits or st vitus dance, timidity, diabetes and deposits in the urine, troubled breathing, indecision, loss of will power, bashfulness, burning of the face, coldness and clamminess of the feet and hands, also of the scrotum, or bag, palpitation of the heart, early loss of fluid during connection, feelings of gloom, despondency, hopelessness of a cure, or fear of impending danger or misfortune, tenderness of the scalp and spine, dryness and itching of the skin, sudden sweating, sudden nervous trembling, noises and reports in the ears and brain, weight on the brain, weak and flabby muscles, easily tired after slight exertion, desire to sleep late in the mornings and failure to be rested by sleep, weakness and torpor the day after a nightly emission has occurred, the oozing of thick white fluid from the urethra when constipated or straining at stool, varicocele, etc., etc. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Weakness and wasting of the organs. As a rule, the organs waste away rapidly or become curved, twisted, or misshapen. Oftentimes the testicles dwindle away to almost nothing. Settled gloom and melancholy pervade the mind, and hallucinations, morbid fear, unnatural lust, groundless jealousy, and a morbid desire for solitude show themselves. Undoubtedly, the list of promotive causes is considerably augmented by maltreatment and the employment of injudicious remedies. We should therefore suggest to all prudent persons the wisdom and importance of consulting competent authority only. Self-enervation in the first instance brings about that irritability which evinces itself in nocturnal discharges, afterwards in inappreciable but exhaustive diurnal discharges, and subsequently in complete debility of the whole generative system. This seminal fluid, such indeed as it is, weak, effete, and devoid of all generative power, is undoubtedly the fluid which the organs suffer to escape, and to prevent further its flow, as well as to give a healthy tone to the secretory and retentive vessels, ought to form our first care. Cough, consumption, and general debility and prostration. It is a curious pathological fact that during the progress of spermatorrhea, difficulty of breathing, cough, and tightness of the chest, arising in many constitutions from the seminal disorder, have sometimes been actually mistaken for pulmonary consumption. The cough is often distressing, occasionally attended by an expectoration of an offensive kind. There is no doubt that many have been maltreated for consumption when spermatorrhea was the real malady. That the latter leads to the former is certain enough, but the stages and connections of the respective diseases have been grossly misunderstood by practitioners who have not had sufficient personal acquaintance with the indications of spermatorrhea. Remember that these continued seminal discharges of an involuntary character disorder every function of the animal economy, and it may be added that while spermatorrhea produces so many ruinous effects peculiar to itself, it aggravates and excites any other disease which may coexist with it. The features become pale, emaciated, and haggard. The eyes are dead, sunken, and lustreless, and in many cases hold in their depths a look of wild, unsettled fear that denotes rapidly approaching insanity. The bowels become sluggish, the appetite capricious, the muscles weak, the urine pale and with a heavy sediment of semen that drains away in it almost constantly. Emissions at night becoming more frequent and copious, sometimes bloody, although the fluid secreted by the wasted testicles is scarcely stronger than water. Sexual incapacity shows itself. Ejaculation is either too quick or else very long delayed. The skin becomes dry and sallow, the liver congested and sluggish. The heart beats irregularly, and any sudden sound, movement, or fright sets it to beating violently. Shortness of breath is complained of. The brain becomes weaker and more sluggish day by day. Our crayons are inserted without pain. He generally loses flesh, and feels uneasiness in his stomach, which suffers from many of the symptoms accompanying dyspepsia. He is easily startled. The slamming of a door, the firing of a cracker, the falling of a book, a sudden touch, or even speaking to him unexpectedly, will cause him to start. Cowardice is a sure consequence of self-abuse and involuntary emissions. The appetite is irregular, often poor, sometimes voracious. The bowels are also variable in their action. The prostatic portion of the urethra is frequently irritable and sometimes is very much inflamed. Oftentimes there is a thickening, a sponginess or puffiness of the parts immediately involving the ejaculatory ducts. The mucous membrane of the vesiculae seminis becomes inflamed and thickened. The testicles and the spermatic cord are oftentimes very tender, and the seminal fluid is much thinner than natural. Such a patient has generally dark spots under his eyes, a sharp nose, and often flushes of hectic color in his cheeks, particularly when in the presence of company, and there is more or less palpitation of the heart. In the second stage, as in the first, the pollutions are diurnal and nocturnal. The latter are copious and recur frequently. So insensible is the passage of semen that the patient is usually astonished and horrified on waking to find himself and bedclothes saturated with this fluid, which is easily absorbed by the clothes, and rapidly dries up, because it has become thin, watery, and effete. In addition to this loss, he is subject to one equally great on almost every occasion of urinating, and we cure where a cure is possible. Defecating. This also takes place without any consciousness on his part, and his only knowledge of the fact is from the alarming weakness he experiences after passing water or going to stool. Distraction or absence of mind renders the judgment unfit for any extensive enterprise. We cure where a cure is possible. The sexual powers are greatly weakened. The overtaxed organs refuse to fulfill their legitimate task. Their susceptibility and irritability are so great that the power of retention is lost, and the seminal fluid is discharged prematurely. The generative organs are wasted and inactive, or so weakened as to secrete but a ropey, thin, and glary fluid, having few or none of the characteristics of vital fluid. Should the individual suffering this way, and either careless or unfortunate enough to go uncured, have offspring, they will assuredly be puny in body and weakly in mind, and will lead a miserable existence through the neglect and indiscretion of their parent. Third stage. Stagnation and wasting. This stage is an aggravation of the two preceding stages combined. The emissions are accompanied and followed by a disagreeable and disgusting sensation of shame and misery. The mind is absorbed as much as can be by the one idea of its wretched situation, and the sufferer is haunted by the thought that his condition and its cause are known to the whole world, and that he is pitied or scorned by every person he meets. He is hypochondriacal, and fearful suggestions of self-destruction ever and anon present themselves. The power of mental concentration is entirely gone, and the memory is so feeble that the patient continually forgets what he begins to say. The dimness of vision is continual and so great as to be a material annoyance. The eyes are wandering or fixed upon the ground, seldom venturing to meet the gaze of another. The ringing in the ears, pains in the head and over the eyes are almost perpetual and frequently accompanied by partial deafness. The heart is the seat of pain, fluttering and throbbing with violent and long-continued palpitation. His hands shake, his limbs tremble, his knees are weak, so much so that at times it is almost impossible for him to walk erect. He experiences an insatiable desire for sleep, and yet upon retiring he lies awake for hours, tormented by his troubled reflections, and at last falls into an uneasy slumber, of short duration, disturbed by wretched dreams. Hard, red pimples frequently appear on the face, forehead and body, scaly patches round the ears, eyes, nose and lips, a black or bluish semicircle shows itself under the eyes, and there is a hollow mark from the corner of the eye in a slanting direction under the cheekbone to the angle of the mouth, which tells its tale. The skin is livid and clammy and the digestion is bad. The patient is tormented with flatulency, which he cannot always control and which he justly dreads, as it renders him an object of disgust to all in his presence. The bowels are generally constipated, obliging him to strain much at stool, thus aggravating the irritation of the prostate gland vesiculi seminals, and increasing the seminal losses. The bladder is irritable and will retain the urine but a short time. The ureters and kidneys are also inflamed, and in post-mortem examinations we hold out no false hopes. Sometimes found to contain abscesses, they are the seat of much pain when pressure is made over the intervertebral spaces of the dorsal and lumbar vertebrae or backbone. The vesiculi seminals have been indurated and can be felt to be knotty and hard. The spinal marrow is very sensitive throughout its whole extent. The cerebellum is the seat of a dull and heavy pain, and there is a feeling of pressure upon the brain. Cerebral congestion now and then occurs. This stage of the disease is frequently accompanied by bronchitis or a continued catarrh, also by disease of the rectum and all the tissues near the generative organs. We hold out no false hopes. It is hardly necessary to say that the functions of the nervous system are completely deranged. Indeed, nervous twitchings of the eyelids, head and limbs are the consequences of spermatorrhea. He is finally either hurried to a premature grave by consumption, epilepsy or apoplexy, or insanity, taking the hopeless form of dementia, has removed him from his home to the madhouse. It is safe to say that of all the cases of incurable insanity, a large majority are caused by spermatorrhea. Many, owing to sheer neglect or to false notions of delicacy, delay seeking for proper medical relief until they are almost destroyed, and body and mind are nearly in ruins. Pitiable the picture of one who has reached this stage of the disease. The organs are still congested, but irritability has given way to torpor and sluggishness. Semen drains away by day and night without provocation, these constant losses dragging the person to the very brink of the grave, or standing him within that melancholy shade where suicide, insanity, or idiocy almost certainly stares him in the face. The organs are wasted almost totally away. All strength, vitality, erectile and procreative power have left them, and the victim is at last totally impotent. Of no use to themselves, a curse to their friends, a disgrace to society, they sink from sight into an early grave or are lost to the world behind asylum doors. It is a sad and terrible picture, but true, too true, to life. The tendency of nature in most disorders is towards cure, but here it is towards deterioration. There is no chance here of the evil wearing itself out, save in madness and death on the one hand, and on the other by the salutary intervention of the most vigorous, cautious, and enlightened treatment, a treatment pursued in the full light of the aids afforded by the great discoveries in physiological science for which the present age is happily distinguished. Fortunately for humanity, by the aid of chemistry, as well as medical science, it has been reserved for us to present to the public the Civiale remedies, which have proved themselves undeniable blessings to thousands, restoring with unerring power those suffering from this hitherto baffling complaint. Less severe cases. There are cases where the effects of early abuse are either so rapid nor so severe. In many instances the persons, to all outward appearances, are strong and robust. They only complain of certain sexual symptoms that trouble them. But let them beware. Appearances are very deceitful. Let our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Sudden fit of illness supervene, and see how quickly these apparently healthy men succumb and are swept away by it. Then, too, in many of these cases, he who today may seem strong and healthy, with the exception of his sexual weakness, may suddenly develop most grave nervous symptoms, and in less than a month be beneath the sod or hopelessly insane. Such cases have occurred, and one particular instance even as we write presents itself to our mind. Poor fellow, he died a raving maniac the very night he was to have been married to one of the most charming young ladies in New Haven. And yet he thought he was perfectly healthy. He only learned his true condition too late for human aid. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Hidden spermatorrhea. In many cases the seminal ducts have become so weak and relaxed that the fluid passes off involuntarily with the water and is not perceived, also when straining at stool and when you have an erection. To test its escape in the urine, pass off your water in a clear glass pint bottle and let it stand 24 hours in a warm place. Then hold up the bottle between yourself and the light, and if you discover a sediment of a white, fleecy nature, resembling cotton, in the bottom, you are suffering from hidden spermatorrhea, from which all your present ailments come. Where this fluid passes off with the urine, it is just as injurious to the system as full emissions, as it is a continual drain day after day, as well as taking that part of the vitality which goes to supply the brain and nerves. Many patients afflicted in this way will notice, shortly after urinating, a dull pain in the forehead, sometimes extending to the eyeballs, causing, as well, a feeling of general debility, as if they had no strength or will to do anything. If this weakness is allowed to go on unchecked, the mind will become diseased, the eyesight will be impaired, and the vital forces consumed, thereby causing partial and complete impotency. Should you desire greater certainty in testing, either send on a sample of your urine, or test it with our powder. The characteristic symptoms of partial impotency are an imperfect erection, or, if the erection is sufficiently vigorous, it is of too short a duration, and the vital fluid is discharged prematurely. The erector muscles become paralyzed, and the organ remains inactive at the call of the will. The person thus afflicted is greatly embarrassed and mortified at his paralytic condition. That buoyancy of spirit is gone, the snap, vim, and vigor that once held sway has departed. And why? Because that great motive power, amativeness, that gives the push and go-aheaditiveness is checked, or rather, ceases to act. The curability of spermatorrhea and impotency. Having before us the records of some 3,000 cases, grave, simple and severe, that have come under our treatment in this country, as well as when you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us the printed copies of the French hospital reports, and Civiale's works, in which he minutely reviews all phases of this complaint, illustrating them with cases from his own practice. We feel justified in assuring our readers that almost any case can be cured, provided thoroughness is the maxim of treatment. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us the method of Profs. Jean Civiale and Lallemand, as now perfected and extended by us, and so justly named after Civiale, stands unrivaled in its success as well as its simplicity and reasonableness. To all such as suffer from this harassing complaint we commend, first, a careful reading of the history of this discovery and the eminent medical men and hospitals that endorse it, and second, a fair trial of these remedies, no matter how hopeless, despondent, and despairing you may be. See page 55. Although the advertising and spreading, and the bringing to full perfection of this treatment is really due to us and our physicians, still we feel in duty bound to always keep in view the two great French surgeons who first discovered the method of intraurethral medication. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. Impotency or lost power. Scarcely a day passes that we do not have some patient inquiring, "What is impotence? Are impotence and spermatorrhea the same disease?" Impotency, from the Latin words not, and potens, to be able, means a condition of the sexual organs in which a man is not able to beget his species. It may be because he has lost his erectile power, and this is how it is most commonly understood, or because he has lost all desire, or lastly, because the vital fluid has become so weakened and degenerated as to have lost its procreative power. Impotence is most common in men past middle age. It may come on as the second or third stage of spermatorrhea, or it may develop slowly or suddenly without any symptoms of spermatorrhea. It may be accompanied by various nervous and exhausting symptoms, or these may be wholly absent. If vital fluid is being lost, and the impotence is due to the weakness thus caused, nervous exhaustion is sure to come sooner or later. Impotence and spermatorrhea may exist together in the same person. Many impotent men have no other bad symptoms than simply this failure of the sexual organs to respond when called upon. The trouble in these cases usually lies in the erectile muscles, which are weakened or paralyzed, and in the nervous bulbs or ganglia, that are blunted or exhausted. A perfectly healthy man should be able to beget his species until he is at least 80 years of age. Instances of such power at the age of 97 are on record. In these days of exhaustion, early decay, excesses and abuse, most men begin to lose their power at or before 40. This is not right, and can certainly be remedied by proper treatment. We offer special help to impotent men. Impotency, complicated with bladder or prostate disease. In such cases, the prostate gland is usually congested, enlarged, and irritated, and needs prompt and thorough treatment. See page 26. The tone of the nervous system is also lowered, even though it may not be apparent to the individual himself. Hence, some good, strong, special, general, and sexual tonic, such as Civiale's tonic regulator, see page 30, is needed, as is shown by the rapid improvement that follows its use, especially when combined with effective measures for strengthening the erectile muscles, invigorating the sexual nerve ganglia, and reducing the prostatic congestion. Some of the most remarkable cases of the thorough cure of impotence and restoration to full sexual vigor that appear in the 53d volume of the French hospital reports were in men past 60 years of age. Impotency and wasting of the organs. In many of these cases of impotence, as well as of spermatorrhea, the organs were either small and puny from birth or had wasted away as the disease progressed, just as a paralyzed arm or leg will waste away from want of use and exercise. Such cases, as also those where there is twisting or curving of the organ, need thorough developmental treatment. Such organs can be readily developed under proper treatment, just as the breast or a limb may be developed and increased in size, strength, and power by the use of the proper treatment. Those who have not kept pace with the advances of medical science abroad can scarcely realize how great her strides have been. Today it is easy, especially in sexual, seminal, and urinary diseases, to do what 10 years ago the majority of physicians deemed impossible, and to Lallemand and Civiale belonged the highest meed of praise for their unremitting labors in bringing this branch of medical science to its present state of comparative perfection. As an illustration, we can cite case after case that has been sent us by physicians in good standing as utterly beyond their skill, and we have returned their patients to them in a few months' time fully and perfectly restored to sexual strength and vigor as they, themselves, were obliged to admit. Impotency at any age is curable. Do not despair then, reader, if you are thus afflicted and have made several trials and failed to find health and vigor. The Civiale remedies, while not infallible, have certainly done wonders for many so-called hopeless cases, and we doubt not that you, too, can be perfectly restored. Submit your conditions and symptoms to our board of consulting physicians, and at least get their opinion upon it. Certain it is that these remedies, brought to light by the eminent French savant, professor in the greatest medical college in France, and adopted and endorsed by all the large Parisian hospitals and most eminent French physicians, cannot possibly hurt you, and more than likely will cure you. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Bladder, kidney, prostatic and urinary diseases. Congestions, irritation, and even inflammation of the urinary organs often occur in men, either alone or as a complication of seminal disease and weakness. The seminal vesicles lie just behind the bladder, while the seminal ducts pass through the body of the prostate gland, and open into the urethra, or urine channel, upon its surface, see Figure 5. Hence, any inflammation or congestion of this large gland that lies at the root of the organ and neck of the bladder is almost certain to produce seminal weakness, losses, and impotence. It will be noticed that men past 50 years of age are often forced to rise in the night once or oftener to make water. This, and the delay that sometimes occurs before the stream will start, are usually due to enlarged prostate gland, a common condition in men past 50. Many a man at this age finds his sexual power declining and cannot understand it. Enlarged prostate gland. As the gland enlarges and becomes stiff and its tissues harden and brawny, it presses upon and deprives the sexual nerves of power and sometimes paralyzes them, causing total impotency. How useless, worse than useless, even hurtful, are the usual remedies. The prostate gland must be softened, cooled, and robbed of its inflammation before anti-impotency remedies can be of the slightest service. And here it is where the great success of the Civiale crayons is best shown. The prostatic crayons melt, run down upon, soothe, quiet, and allay the inflammatory and hardened gland, while the impotence crayons are retoning, strengthening and revitalizing the sexual nerves, and strengthening the erectile and ejaculatory muscles. Perfect cure and perfect restoration are possible if proper means are properly applied. Spermatorrhea likewise is both caused and complicated by prostatic and urinary inflammation. The sexual nerves are involved and weakened in the same manner as in impotency, while, in addition, the hardened substance of the prostate gland keeps the mouths of the seminal ducts open, and the vital fluid runs away into the urethra to be swept out with the urine, without let or hindrance. Soon this loss tells, not only upon the brain and nerves and general health, but upon the testicles where this fluid is made. So much is wasted that these two glands, work as they may, cannot supply a sufficiency of good, healthy fluid, and meet the difficulty by making a thin, watery, infertile fluid that would flow away even if the mouths of the ducts were healthy. They do this at the cost of a terrible strain upon the whole system. They strain and injure themselves and grow weak and flabby and finally wasted, often rupture small vessels in their substance, thus yielding bloody or black seminal fluid. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. The causes of prostatitis or prostatorrhea are many and diverse. The most prominent are gonorrhea or gleat, running backward and settling in the gland or neck of the bladder; stricture, deep in the canal, causing congestion and inflammation; masturbation, by keeping the gland excited, congested, and irritated, often causes it; Exposure to cold and wet, especially sitting on a cold doorstep or damp seat. Blows and injuries of any kind. Strong injections, and rough jabbing with steel sounds or rough bougies. Eating hot condiments, or too free indulgence in alcoholic beverages. Various complications. If the inflammation extends to the neck of the bladder, he has an attack of cystitis. If it goes down along the seminal ducts, it produces swelled testicle, clogged duct, chronic enlargement, cancer, cysts, and hopeless wasting of the testicles. If it extends up the ureters, it causes Bright's disease, abscess of the kidneys, or lumbar fistula. If it runs forward along the urine canal, it produces so-called gleat. If it settles in the prostate gland and becomes chronic, it may cause abscess of the gland, retention of the urine, and certainly either or both spermatorrhea or impotency. It may thus be seen how exceedingly dangerous a disease this prostatitis is, and how very important it becomes to check it at the earliest possible moment. Symptoms. We have space for but the most prominent and frequent ones: a dull, aching, dragging or throbbing pain between the legs, made worse by standing, walking, jolting, and sometimes relieved by hard pressure, or lying down with one's feet higher than their head, pain, burning or smarting on passing urine, twisting of the stream, the oozing of a thin, glary fluid, sticking together of the lips of the mouth of the urinal canal. Soreness, aching or tenderness of one or both testicles, dull pain or ache in the small of the back or buttocks, dizziness, sudden fits of exhaustion, convulsions, coma, and death. A microscopical examination of the urine will reveal the nature of the difficulty in a moment. There also will be found evidences of great nervous wear and tear, and seminal losses, more or less constant. Gleat and stricture as a cause of spermatorrhea and impotency. These two diseases are probably less understood than almost any other equally common. It is safe to say that at least one man out of every 10 has, our crayons are inserted without pain. Has had, or will have one or both. Neglected gleat often causes stricture. Neglected or improperly treated stricture often causes and keeps up a gleat. Our crayons are inserted without pain. Another set of statements, equally sweeping and based upon the best of medical evidence, may be made, i.e., more cases of gleat and stricture are caused by self-abuse, masturbation, onanism, and sexual excesses than by gonorrhea, formerly and ignorantly supposed to be about the only cause. Furthermore, the main cause of both spermatorrhea and impotence is stricture, whether caused by self-abuse, gonorrhea, clap, or any other excess. It was this very important point that Lallemand guessed at, and that Civiale definitely ascertained to be a fact, proved it by examinations of both living and dead subjects, and demonstrated it before the eyes of every member of the French Academy of Medicine, the most learned body of medical men in the world. Upon this discovery is based the now world-famed urethral crayon treatment. It cures, absolutely, thoroughly and permanently cures, because it is based on truth, because the proper remedies are placed upon the very seat and fountainhead of the disease, where quickly and thoroughly it stamps out the fire, inflammation, from the Latin in, and flamma, to burn, to be a fire, and eradicates the cause, at the same time healing the abrasions, releasing and invigorating the nerves, cleansing and unclogging the ducts, strengthening the erectile muscles, in a word restoring the whole sexual apparatus to its natural tone and strength, not harshly or violently, but gently, kindly, soothingly. Indeed, it is a heavy debt of gratitude the sufferers from sexual disease and weakness owe to Professor Jean Civiale, greatest of all French savants. Were any further proofs necessary, the following facts, the results of recent experimental investigations by such men as Acton, 1 Black, 2 Gross, 3 Hammond, 4 Bartholow, 5 Dupuytren, 6 Eckhard, 7 Levin, 8 Galtz, 9 Olivier, 10 Trousseau, 11 Herb, 12 Otis, 13 Wade, 14 Sir Everard Home, 15 Ligies, 16 Terrelon, 17 Fleischmann, 18 Beard, 19 Grunfeld, 20 Guyon, 21 Rosenthal, 22 Landon Carter Gray, 23 and many others, could be cited in its favor. Acton, 1 Black, 2 Gross, 3 Hammond, 4 Bartholow, 5 Dupuytren, 6 Eckhard, 7 Levin, 8 Galtz, 9 Olivier, 10 Trousseau, 11 Herb, 12 Otis, 13 Wade, 14 Sir Everard Home, 15 Leges, 16 Terolon, 17 Fleischmann, 18 Beard, 19 Grunfeld, 20 Guyon, 21 Rosenthal, 22 Landon Carter Gray, 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. We cure where a cure is possible. Stricture the result of masturbation, and the cause of weakness and impotence. In brief, it may be stated that masturbation in early life, and sexual excesses at a later period, may, and do produce congestion, inflammation, spasm, ulceration, granulations, ulcers, and both spasmodic and organic strictures of the urethra, that spermatorrhea and impotence are due to this condition, and that the only really rational treatment is that which directly medicates and heals these parts. This, Civiale's soluble urethral crayons do, better and quicker than anything else. Professor Gross, 24 for instance, says, exclusive of these cases, my notes show that 13 out of every 100 cases of stricture are due to onanism. And Otis 25 says, 9% of all cases are traceable to that practice. Reeves, Henry Smith, Goulet, Physic and Leroy give masturbation as a cause of stricture. Black states a like case leading to sexual incapacity, as a result of the stricture. Wade says, in several instances of the kind, where there had been no sexual intercourse, the strictures, which were at the bulb, proved more than usually refractory from the extreme morbid sensitiveness of the whole urethral canal. Gross. 24. Otis. 25. Reeves, Henry Smith, Goulet, Physic. Leroy. Black. Wade. Gross goes on to say that in at least 8 out of every 10 cases of spermatorrhea or impotence, stricture of the urethra is the cause of the trouble, whether the stricture is due to gonorrhea, gleat, etc., or to masturbation or excesses. The Civiale. Perfected and combined treatment. How senseless, then, to endeavor to cure such conditions with stomach medicines. Still, the Civiale method does not wholly discard them. They have their place and their purpose, and served it well. It was his practice in many cases to use nervines and tonics, as well as digestives and laxatives, by the stomach, and with excellent results, for in many of these cases the digestion was poor, the liver torpid, the bowels sluggish and constipated, and filled with wind, the appetite capricious and uneven. Crayons in the urethra could not wholly cure these symptoms, although they stopped the drain that originally caused them. Combined with the tonic regulator, the results were prompt and satisfactory. Civiale. Many patients began to recuperate the moment the inflammation, stricture, ulceration, and accompanying losses of vital fluid were stopped, and were soon in robust health again. In others, however, he found it best, at the same time that he was healing the diseased urethra, to clear and invigorate the debilitated nerves and weary minds, to tone up the stomach and bowels, set the liver gently working, start the kidneys, nearly always congested, and infuse new life, strength, and vigorous impulses into the whole system by means of his tonic regulator, which is a pleasant and most efficacious combination of tonics, laxatives, not purgatives, and deobstruents. Skin, kidneys, lungs, heart, mind, nerves, stomach, liver, and bowels were all set to working right. And, as a consequence, aided by the urethral remedies, the losses ceased, erectile power and sexual vigor returned, the step became buoyant and elastic, the mind clear, the memory retentive, the eyes clear and bright, the lips and cheeks ruddy with healthful color, the whole system, indeed, renovated, refreshed, and reinvigorated. We hold out no false hopes. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. The duties, responsibilities, and failures in and of married life. What more perfect or pleasing picture than that of happy married life? Yet how little of it we see! How the newspapers dish up to us in strong words the misery, despair, wretchedness, infidelity, and deceit of the divorce court! How it stares at us from the desolate fireside of friend and acquaintance, is hinted at or suppressed by the records of the coroner's office, leers at us from the sumptuous mansion of the affluent, lurks in the humble cottage of the mechanic. How sad the contrast between the home where nestle happiness, love, contentment, offspring, and the abode of suspicion, deceit, infidelity, or barrenness. And yet men and women are being married every day, every hour, aye, every minute. Men and women incompatible physically, mentally, morally, urged on by lust, cupidity, love, to escape unhappy homes, to hide sad sins, for 1,000 reasons, some good, many bad, are constantly marrying. A man selects a wife less carefully than he would a horse. A woman yields herself, her life, her happiness, blindly, unreasoningly, to a man of whom she knows nothing. A man better fitted for the hospital, the infirmary, or the insane asylum, enters the bonds of wedlock with never a thought of the consequences, with never a care as to whether he will wreck his own life and happiness or that of the innocent girl he is deceiving, with never a heed of the ill-starred, diseased, puny, or idiotic progeny his act may bring into being, a burden to the community, a curse to himself, and a constant reminder of the parents' foolhardiness. Aye, even crime. No man who is affected with any form of sexual or venereal disease should for a single instant even think of marriage until every trace of his weakness or disease has disappeared. In these days of medical advance in this special field, there is no excuse for such action. There are few, very few, cases of seminal weakness and impotency that cannot now be cured. Of course, here as elsewhere, there are traps and humbugs, quacks and charlatans, false theories and empty moralizing, but there is also truth and knowledge, hope and certainty for such as are sufficiently in earnest to search for them. Professor Civiale, by his indomitable perseverance, thorough study and experiment, and final conclusions and discoveries, has placed the means of a perfect restoration to full mental, bodily, and sexual vigor within the reach of all, and no man has any right now to enter either blindly or willfully into so sacred and important a relationship as marriage, and to lower and stultify its ends by blighting the happiness of a fair young wife, exhausting his own vitality in the vain attempt to have offspring, or in having such as shall be a curse to him through life. There are those, let it be hoped they are really honest in their ignorance, who look upon marriage as the only real cure for seminal weaknesses. Even if it were a fact that the marital relations did accomplish such a result, and they never do, as bear witness the thousands who are today weak, exhausted, exsanguinated, unhappy, nerveless, hopeless wrecks, who are cursing the ignorant pretenders who gave this false, this fatal advice, even if such our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Result was a certainty. What right has any man to besmirch and soil the purity of a happy and innocent maiden for such a purpose? By what law of humanity are woman's hopes and happiness to be hazarded on so fragile a basis, her bark of life to be launched into a pool of such sickening bestiality? Such marriages bear and are bearing deadly fruit before our eyes day by day, in infidelity, abandonment, suicide, insanity, crime and prostitution, in disease and misery, even to the 3rd and 4th generation. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. A special set of premarital, before marriage, remedies. No more delicate or wonderful piece of mechanism, no more grandly conceived and wonderfully perfected bit of God's handicraft is to be found in the male and female sexual organs. It is a wonder to those who have made these parts, with their elastic vessels, cavernous sinuses, network of nervous ganglia and fibrillae, chain of lymphatics, periodical ovulation, timed pubescence, and perfected, coordinate functions, a study, that they stand abuse and excess so well, that the fierce blasts of lust and passion that sear and scorch them and well nigh dry up their fountain springs of vitality and fecundity, do not wholly destroy or hopelessly disarrange their delicate tissues and functions. The first few years of married life, even to a healthy man, are fraught with dangers he knows nothing of. How much more then is the sufferer from a present, or even a former seminal weakness, in danger? No man, be he ever so healthy, ever so conscious of purity and freedom from abuse, should enter the marital state without preparing for the strain naturally to be expected. As the voice, skin, hair, manner and morals of the youth change at the period of puberty, when the sexual power is first developed, when he first becomes a man. So does the system, mental and moral, change when he enters the bonds of matrimony. If at puberty new diseases are prone to show themselves and old ones to be outgrown, so at marriage a like change must be at least expected, and he who blindly or thoughtlessly hazards a leap in the dark is foolish, or rather foolhardy. A special course of nerve and sexual tonics, especially for the use of young men who have endangered or injured their sexual power by abuse in early years, and for older men who have exhausted themselves by later excesses. Professor Civiale was wont, very wisely, we know from actual experience, to prescribe, for a few months before marriage, a special tonic and strengthening marital course of remedies, having 3 distinct ends in view, viz. A. The strengthening, toning up and fortifying of the general system, nerves and brain, against the unusual call soon to be made upon them. B. The strengthening, toning up and fortifying of the sexual nerves, ducts, ganglia, vesicles and testes, against the strain soon to be applied to them, and by this and the preceding means putting the individual in the very when you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. Best and most favorable condition for the production of strong, healthy, robust and creditable offspring, and when you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. C. The steady and perfect eradication from the system, by every pore and viaduct, of all poisonous, contagious, venereal or other material that might in any way endanger the perfectly normal, healthy and strong, condition of parent or offspring above spoken of. Through early abuse, excesses, exposure, neglect, carelessness, imperfect sanitary conditions, wrong methods of living, immoral practices, etc., the blood and liver are liable, even though the skin be clear and the cheeks rosy, to harbor some poisonous humors that might be transmitted to the wife or offspring, poor innocents, too often made to suffer pitiably for the vices or thoughtlessness of the father. Every man about to marry owes this cleansing, purification and strengthening of the system general and the system sexual, to his wife, his fellow men and to himself. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. The Civiale Urethral Treatment. For the radical and lasting cure of all diseases of the sexual and urinary organs. Its mode of operation, application and advantages. The Civiale treatment, by means of quickly melting medicated crayons that are easily and painlessly inserted into the urethra, or urine channel, and thus melt and run down over the irritated, inflamed or strictured parts, the congested prostate gland, and into the orifices of the seminal ducts, is the most successful treatment ever brought forward for these diseases, and it has met with just appreciation. For it has performed radical cures in some of the most serious and distressing cases. Some of the advantages may be briefly summed up as follows. 1. It combines local and direct medication of the diseased parts of the urethra, seminal ducts and vesicles, as well as of the generative nerves, by means of urethral crayons, with judicious invigoration of the general digestive, nervous, mental and circulatory systems, by means of stomach remedies, thus attacking the complaint from all sides. 2. The Civiale urethral crayons are easily introduced, melt rapidly, medicate the entire canal, never give the slightest pain, never stain the clothing, are rapid, pleasant and cleanly in their action, could be used by a child without danger of injury, are perfectly soft and flexible, and give uniform satisfaction. 3. They need be used but once, or, at the most, twice daily. We offer special help to impotent men. 4. The good results of the treatment are apparent within the first 5 or 10 days. 5. Their price is so reasonable as to place them within the reach of all. 6. They may be used to cure gleat, stricture and prostatitis, when complicating spermatorrhea or impotence. 7. They never decompose or lose their strength. 8. They are absolutely free from minerals, mercurials, caustics or irritants. 9. They will do precisely what and all that is claimed for them. Civiale's knowledge of the anatomy, physiology and pathology of the genitourinary, sexual and urinary organs, especially fitted him to study and investigate this subject. It did not take him long to perceive that Lohrmann's idea that the deep urethra, where the seminal ducts open into it, was the real seat of the disease in both spermatorrhea and impotence, was the true and correct one, and therefore, that any plan of treatment, to be successful, must look to allaying and healing the inflammation, congestion or ulceration of the urethra at the neck of the bladder, and stopping the losses. He reasoned that when the inflammation, irritation and spasm of these parts, and of the seminal ducts, was relieved, the drain of the vital fluid would cease, the dilated mouths of the ducts contract, the vital fluid become thicker and healthier, the organs increase to natural size, and the distressing nervous symptoms, oftentimes dangerous to life or reason, cease to trouble the patient. These crayons shown here are small, soft, smooth, perfectly flexible, and dissolve as soon as they are pushed into the urethral canal, thus bringing the remedies directly in contact with the ulcerated and eroded parts, it even running down the ducts into the seminal vesicles themselves. The growth, vigor, and future prosperity of every nation depend upon the strength and energy of its young men, and if the places of the robust and healthy are to be filled by effeminate, weakened, nervous, and physically drained youths, such as the terrible vice of masturbation is yearly giving us, the results cannot be other than disastrous. The advice, warning, and guidance of parents and guardians must be looked to for prevention, the method and remedies of L'Allemand and Civiale for a cure. A guaranteed assurance. There are some persons who, from having used various forms of medicated bougies, having had sounds, catheters, and bougies roughly passed upon them by unskillful persons, or merely from an indistinct belief, based upon hearsay or tradition, feel some hesitancy about passing anything into the organ for fear that it may do harm, cause pain, or give rise to stricture. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. The majority of these timid people have got this idea from hearing it said that stricture and inflammation have often been caused by gonorrhea, clap, injections, and they therefore have the idea that anything put into the urethra will do harm. There is not the slightest doubt but that strong injections of nitrate of silver, zinc, copper, carbolic acid, and the like, of which these injections are usually made, have, in many instances, caused severe inflammation and eventually stricture. But that is no reason why proper and absolutely unirritating and bland medicines, such as those in the Civiale crayons, should do this, and they don't do it. Make up a strong injection of zinc, copper, and C, and take a swallow of it. It will burn and pain your mouth and throat, make you hoarse, and for days afterward you will find it painful to swallow. Put a troche or lozenge, properly medicated for the purpose, into your mouth, and instead of causing pain, irritation, and difficulty in swallowing, it will relieve these symptoms if they exist, cool and calm the membrane, soothe the irritation, and give tone and strength to the vocal cords. So it is with the Civiale soluble crayons. Civiale soluble crayons. 1. They are wholly unlike any caustic, metallic, or irritating injection. 2. They do not contain a grain of any mineral, caustic, or irritant of any kind. 3. Their ingredients are purely vegetable. 4. They soothe, calm, and allay irritation, and give strength and tone to the mucous membrane, seminal ducts, generative nerves, and prostate gland. 5. They do not cause stricture, but they cure it if it exists. 6. Allow one to dissolve in the mouth, eye, ear, nose, or, in fact, anywhere, and they will be found to possess only soothing and healing properties. 7. They can be inserted into the penis without the slightest trouble, and melting rapidly and easily, flow down in a bland, soothing, healing, and strength and light-giving stream over the diseased parts. These crayons have been in constant use in Paris for the past 25 years, and have never yet, and never will, caused the slightest pain or irritation. Patients may rest assured, therefore, that in using these standard French remedies they are absolutely protected, and need not feel the slightest degree of fear. Indeed, so well established is this fact that we are willing to pay $1,000 to any person or persons who can cite a single instance when the Civiale crayons have ever done the slightest harm. The disease is in the urethra or urine channel, whether it be spermatero, impotence, prostatitis, or gleat, and in order to effect a lasting cure, the remedies must be applied directly to the diseased membrane. In 9 cases out of 10, Spasmodic stricture already exists and must be cured before the person can get well, and the only way to cure it is to apply the medicines directly to it. It would be as silly for a man with an ulcer on his leg, or a crushed finger, to expect to cure it by taking drugs by the stomach and not applying proper lotions and salves directly to it, as to try to cure seminal disease or weakness. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Without going right to the spot, as can be done by the use of the elegant and harmless crayons of Civiale. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. It was by establishing the fact of local disease and a local remedy clearly and distinctly, upon both physiological and pathological grounds and data, that Lallement and Civiale gained such worldwide reputation. And it was the discovery of not only the proper remedies, but an elegant and perfect means of applying them directly to the very seat and root of the disease, that has made the Civiale method so justly famous, and has crowned its use with such undoubted success in this country, even in cases where every other plan and agent had failed. A reasonable and honest guarantee. We feel no hesitation whatever in guaranteeing a perfect and permanent cure of spermatorrhea, impotence, debility, and C. In any case wherein our medical director decides that a cure is possible by any means, if the patient will use reasonable care and diligence in pursuing the treatment, and this is not hard or tiresome, on the contrary, it is easy, simple, and direct. We say, in any case wherein our medical director decides that a cure is possible by any means. And we say it with a purpose, for it is our aim and desire, at all times, to be perfectly frank and honest with those who consult us. There are cases that no remedy, be it ever so good, can cure, and when such a one occurs in our practice, we endeavor to show the patient his exact condition, and not, as is so often done, try to persuade him to purchase remedies that we know will do him no good, or, at least, be but an experiment. So, in consulting our physicians, you may be sure of at least an honest opinion, in exact conformity with the facts in your case. Chapter 9. Treatment. The different forms of remedies for different forms of sexual and urinary diseases. These crayons are put up in packages, each of which will last 1 month. A single package is ordinarily sufficient for mild cases of either spermatorrhea or impotence. From 2 to 3 packages are required for chronic, severe or obstinate cases, or where the person is much debilitated or advanced in years. There are 5 kinds. Number 1, for spermatorrhea and chronic debility. Number 2, for impotence or lost power. Number 3, for urinary, kidney, bladder or prostate troubles. Number 4, for gonorrhea. Number 5, for gleat and stricture, of venereal origin. Also, number 6, a before-marriage tonic course. Number 7, a developing lotion for weak and wasted organs. Our crayons are inserted without pain. The following are the main symptoms of each class, with the kind of course they usually call for. If the patient has the symptoms of both classes, he is evidently in an advanced stage, and needs both courses. Special caution. The reader is warned against confounding the Civiale urethral crayons with the American medicated bougies, injections, pastilles, and the like. The disease is really seated in the urethra, urine canal, and can be easily and painlessly medicated, and certainly cured, by means of the Civiale crayons. Civiale urethral crayons. Civiale crayons. Civiale's urethral crayons. Course number 1. For spermatorrhea, nervous debility and masturbation. Symptoms: emissions, day or night, oozing of a glary fluid under excitement and imaginings, presence of the opposite sex, etc., partial and imperfect erections, desire to masturbate, formation of evil pictures in the mind, flushing and chilliness, stupidity and tendency to doze or sleep, mental habitude, failing memory, lack of power of application, energy or concentration, restlessness, pain and smarting in passing urine, wetting the bed, pain in the kidneys, headache, pimples on the face or body, itching or peculiar sensations about the scrotum, bag, thighs, legs, anus, etc., wasting of the organs, stringiness and softening of the testicles, dyspepsia, sluggish bowels, torpid liver, failing sight, pains in the head, front, top and back, chest, limbs, etc., sensation of the bowels falling out, dizziness on stooping over or kneeling, specks before the eyes, erotic dreams, melancholy, developing sometimes into insanity, numbness of arms, hands, feet, or legs, precursors of paralysis, twitchings of the muscles of the eyelids and elsewhere, sometimes ending in epileptic fits or st vitus dance, timidity, diabetes and deposits in the urine, troubled breathing, indecision, loss of willpower, bashfulness, burning of the face, coldness and clamminess of the feet and hands, also of the scrotum, or bag, palpitation of the heart, early loss of fluid during connection, feelings of gloom, despondency, hopelessness of a cure, or fear of impending danger or misfortune, tenderness of the scalp and spine, dryness and itching of the skin, sudden sweating, sudden nervous trembling, noises and reports in the ears and brain, weight on the brain, weak and flabby muscles, easily tired after slight exertion, desire to sleep late in the mornings, and failure to be rested by sleep, weakness and torpor the day after a nightly emission has occurred, the oozing of a thick, white fluid from the urethra when constipated or straining at stool, varicocele, etc., etc. $5 per box. Full course of 3 boxes, for obstinate and chronic cases, $12. We cure where a cure is possible. We cure where a cure is possible. Special note. It is a rare thing for any one patient to have all these symptoms, and some may have some not here mentioned, but it is important to know just which they do have. Persons desiring treatment will, therefore, please tear out the proper page, and having crossed out such symptoms as they do not have, return it to us for the consideration of our physician. To save delay, it is best in ordinarily severe cases to send the price of one course, and leave the selection to our physician's discretion. When less is needed than what is paid for, the balance to the patient will be returned to him with the necessary medicine. Special note: Civiale's Urethral Crayons. Course number 2. For impotence, failing or lost strength and vigor of the generative organs, sterility, etc., etc. Symptoms: impotence may arise without any previous symptoms of spermatorrhea, and solely as the result of abuse, overwork, confinement, blows, falls, fever, etc., but it is often the direct result of spermatorrhea, forming the 3rd stage of that disorder. Loss of sexual desire or power, imperfect or rapidly failing erections, too early emissions during connection, denoting irritability, delayed emissions, denoting blunting of sensation, failure to consummate marital duties, oozing of vital fluid, unnatural desire, but not sufficient power, nervous exhaustion, etc., wasting of the organs, etc., etc., etc. 1 box, for simple or recent cases, $6. Full course of 3 boxes, for severe or chronic cases, men past middle age, feeble subjects, etc., etc., $15. Civiale's Urethral Crayons. Course number 3. For kidney, bladder, prostatic and other urinary difficulties. Symptoms. Frequent urination, rising at night to urinate, pain or scalding in passing water, dribbling of urine after completing the act, pain and aching in the perineum, mucus oozing from prostatitis, gravel, brickdust deposit, and other sediments, stone in the bladder, diabetes, irritation and enlargement of the prostate gland, congestion and inflammation of the kidneys, bloody urination, etc., etc. Many cases of seminal disease are due to or made worse by urinary trouble, especially prostatic disease, existing at the same time. Hence, when such is the case, it is important to treat the urinary as well as the seminal disease in order to be certain to permanently and thoroughly cure both. The action of the Civiale urethral, we hold out no false hopes. Crayons in these cases is prompt and satisfactory. Indeed, this is the only known means of reaching and curing prostatic affections. We hold out no false hopes. 1 box, $5. 2 boxes, $9. Full course, 3 boxes, $12. Civiale's Urethral Crayons. Course number 4. For gonorrhea. 1 box, a certain cure. prompt, painless, and leaves no stricture. Constantly used in L'Hôpital du Midi and L'Hôpital Lorraine, the two great venereal disease hospitals of Paris, the one for males, the other for females, as well as in the others. $5 per box. Civiale's Urethral Crayons. Course number 5. For gleat and stricture, when the result of venereal disease. The formula used in preparing these urethral crayons is one of the finest the great Civiale conceived. Repeated trials and modifications finally ended in an almost perfect remedy. Gleat or obstinate milky discharge or oozing of from 2 to 12 years standing yielded painlessly and permanently to their use. Stricture, too, even when organic, if not so far advanced as to interfere seriously with urination, yielded kindly to this treatment, being gradually dissolved and absorbed until, at last, the canal was left free and clear, and all the symptoms of urinary irritation had disappeared. Testimony from Dr. Laurie, intern at the Hôpital du Midi, will give some idea of the popularity of this form of treatment in Paris. With them he cured 80 consecutive cases of chronic gleat. $5 per box. 2 boxes, $8. 3 boxes, $10. Course number 6. Civiale's Premarital Tonic Course. This is the course we have already adverted to under the head of marriage, and we believe that enough was there said to make plain both its object and application. This, unlike the preceding courses, is, so to speak, a mixed one, consisting of a combination of 1. Tonics and sexual nervines to be taken by the mouth, 2. A specially prepared course of crayons, tonic, antispasmodic and detergent, to be used in the urethra, and 3. A lotion or application which, by being gently applied to the parts once a day with a sponge, our treatment is pleasant, quick and lasting. Soft cloth or the hand adds greatly to the strength and erectile power, as well as the tone, development, and vigor of the testicles. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. These are put up under the strict personal supervision of our head chemist, Mr. Dubel, and are exactly in accordance with the formulae and instructions of the late Professor Civiale. Price per set, $25. This course may be used alone or in connection with any of the other courses. No man, or woman either, could be injured by it, and many weak and impotent sufferers will find in its use health, strength, and bodily and mental vigor. In some instances, the tonic regulator and lotion part of this course are advisable without the crayons, and hence we quote their price separately. Tonic regulator, $10. Lotio Fortier, $5. Civiale's tonic regulator. Civiale's tonic regulator is all that its name indicates, and much more besides. It is composed of tonics, nervines, bitters, laxatives, nerve foods, cholagogues, acting on the liver, diuretics and diaphoretics, remedies acting on the kidneys and skin and thereby increasing their secretions and cleansing and purifying the blood, digestives, etc., etc., etc. It will thus be seen that a more complete and uniform general tonic regulator could not be devised. For it acts upon the brain, mind, nervous system, digestive organs, spleen and pancreas, the bowels, keeping them in a healthy and regular manner only, not purging or weakening, upon the heart, lungs, skin, blood, and kidneys. So skillfully is the combination made that no one ingredient interferes with the other, but on the contrary each seems to vie with the other in building up and renovating a shattered, weakened, and disordered system. Bilious, soggy, sleepy men, with aching heads, foul breaths, bad-tasting mouths on rising, clogged secretions, sense of inability to exertion, furred or yellow tongues, and the like, absolutely need the tonic regulator, and not blue mass or anti-bilious pills. Weak, nervous, spiritless, exhausted, debilitated, pale, ambitionless, easily tired, prone to become short of breath and have pain inside on running, who find it hard to get sleep, are restless, brood over their troubles, real or imaginary, start at loud noises or sudden jars, perspire too easily, flush too readily, are not rested by sleep, and who are neuralgic, certainly need the tonic regulator, and will find it rapid in action and very pleasant in its results. Health, strength, vigor, rosy cheeks, elastic step, cheery voice, zest and happiness, hope and ambition, hearty flesh and good ruddy blood, made by a perfect digestion of strong foods, will certainly follow, and as they come, all the old myths and phantoms, the melancholy, dread and brooding will disappear like unhealthy nightly vapors before the sun. Men, young or old, who have let business cares and worries, mental trouble, when you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. Family jars, overwork and constant brain wear and tear, confinement, or long hours in unhealthy offices, lack of exercise, too rapid bolting of food, and the like, ruin their previously good constitutions, or those who, through youthful abuses committed in ignorance and repented so bitterly, or later excesses from unbridled passions, have drained their vitality, established a condition of sexual atony, without tonos, tone or strength or vigor, or done serious harm to their nervous systems, brains or minds, will find the very vital restorative and special generative tonic they need the most in Civiale's tonic regulator. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. It does not do one thing, it does many. While it throws open one door to let health, strength, and vigor enter, it opens others for poisonous secretions, blood impurities, and waste products to escape. It not only makes the blood purer and richer, but it strengthens the organ, the heart, that pumps it everywhere throughout the system. It not only builds up and rejuvenates the general system, but it brings vernal strength and power to the weakened and debilitated organs. It was here that Civiale made common sense and medical science join hands. With his medicated urethral crayons he healed and strengthened the organs of generation by direct local application. While with the tonic regulator he sent his powerful yet harmless emissaries, tonics, digestives, cholagogues, nervines and nerve foods, laxatives, diuretics, etc., into the system, by the stomach, with the food, thus guaranteeing their entrance into the blood which carried them to every nerve fiber and tissue and attacked the disease on every side. This is why this double treatment, intelligently carried out, cannot fail to rebuild the most debilitated and exhausted constitution and check the most serious drains and losses. Course number 7. Developmental lotion. As has already been stated, in some persons seminal disease and losses of vital fluid lead to a wasting away, shrinking or dwindling of the generative organs. It exists in others from birth, and is in no way connected with seminal disease. Whichever be the case, it is nevertheless true that a wasted or deformed part of the body, be it arm, leg, or what not, cannot in this condition be expected to perform its function in a natural, vigorous, and healthy manner. There is a great deal of ignorance upon this subject, ignorance that interferes greatly with the full and proper treatment of cases of seminal weakness. Many sufferers from seminal disease and impotence seem to think that just as soon as the losses or emissions are stopped, or erectile power returns, the parts will begin to grow and develop, and soon be restored to natural size and proportions. This is not so. In some few instances it does occur, but in the large majority it does not. It is therefore necessary in these cases to take special measures to fully and perfectly develop the defective parts, and it can only be done by giving we offer special help to impotent men. A new start to growth and circulation to the nervous and nutritive centers of these parts. A breast, a limb, a hand, indeed any part of the human body, especially in persons not past 50 years of age, can be enlarged and developed, and so, too, can the sexual organs. We offer special help to impotent men. The developmental lotion that has been in use for many years is a local application, viz., applied directly to the organs, and acts by stimulating growth, circulation, and nutrition. It is cleanly, easily applied, rapid and satisfactory in its results, and we guarantee that it will give uniform satisfaction in all cases where our board of consulting physicians recommend the case as favorable for it. Price of the developmental lotion. Strongest $15. Less strong $10. It is put up in quantities sufficient to accomplish a full and perfect development. Should more than is at first sent be needed to complete the development, we will furnish it at half price. Full instructions accompany it. It should be used in connection with the remedies for impotency or spermatorrhea in every case where the organs are wasted. Its effects in such cases are wonderful, and the results very gratifying. Civiale Remedial Agency, 174 Fulton Street, New York. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Reorganized Consulting Staff. G. G. Mortimer, AM, MD, PhD, Chief of Staff. G. Mortimer. Richard Lee, AM, MD, of the Universities of Oxford, London and Melbourne, Master of Arts, member of the Royal College of Surgeons of England, late consulting surgeon to the Beechworth Hospital and professor of botany and chemistry at the Tasmanian Institute. Honorary member of the Victoria Medical Society and Fellow of the Royal Society of Tasmania and of the Anthropological and Physical Societies of London, University medalist, etc., etc. Chief of Personal Consultation. Richard Lee. Henry H. Kane, AM, MD, late Medical Superintendent of the De Quincy Home, intern at the Roosevelt, New York, Bellevue, Charity and Lenox Hospitals, physician to the Northeastern and Good Samaritan dispensaries, lecturer at the Women's Medical College, on urinary and renal diseases, etc., etc., etc. Henry H. Kane. S. Sorensen, AM, PhD, manufacturing, analytical and experimental chemist, licentiate of the School of Pharmacy of Heidelberg and Berlin, Germany. This accomplished chemist has full charge of all analyses of urine, the preparation of our various formulae, the purchase and importation of all drugs, etc., etc. S. Sorensen. Louis B. Jones, Business and General Manager. Louis B. Jones. With such a complete and accomplished staff, it will be seen that the case of every person consulting us will receive the most careful and combined strict privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure, opinion, judgment, and decision of all these men. We have the greatest and most generally successful remedies known, and by thoroughly understanding every detail of the cases submitted to us, and carefully applying these remedies, we seldom or never fail to perform a pleasant, absolute, and lasting cure. Strict privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. Personal consultation. Patients desiring a consultation with our Chief of Staff will find our offices open and physicians in attendance from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily, and from 9 to 12 Sundays. How to send money. Money should be sent by post office order, postal note, check, draft, or express order. Checks, etc., may be made payable either to the Civiale Remedial Agency, or, if secrecy is desired, to our Superintendent, Mr. L. B. Jones. Please state in your letter to whom the order, when such is sent, is made payable, in order to avoid confusion in indexing them for banking. How to send urine. In sending urine, bear in mind the following. Never send by mail, always by express, charges prepaid. Send morning urine. Write your name on a slip of paper and paste it on the bottle. Pack the bottle securely in a box filled with sawdust or the like. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Varicocele. Varicose testicle, or varicocele. A very common disease amongst men and boys, and one that has a very serious effect in weakening the sexual powers, causing emissions and losses, and preventing a thorough and permanent cure of these complaints. Varicocele, from the Greek, pronounced varikeocele, accent on either var or cele, is a condition of bagging, bunching, bulging or twisting of the veins in the scrotum, bag or testicle sac. It is most commonly found on the left side of the bag, but sometimes is to be seen on both sides. Usually the scrotum is bulged out on the side and sometimes hangs very low, so long and twisted are the veins. To the touch the veins feel like a bunch of angleworms. In some cases they can be seen knotted and swollen through the thin skin of the bag. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Figure 9. A varicocele. Figure 10. Varicocele, an instrument in place. A hidden danger. In cases of varicocele of the cord, one of the most dangerous of all forms, the veins in the bag are not affected, the trouble being mostly in the groin, in the canal through which the veins run, where the swollen and knotted veins press upon and seriously injure the cord, preventing the free flow of vital fluid, and thereby causing impotence, wasting of the testicles. Our crayons are inserted without pain, etc. A dull, heavy, aching or dragging pain in the groin, back or legs, is about the only symptom. Our crayons are inserted without pain. The great danger of this form of varicocele lies in the fact that thousands of young men are going about today not knowing that they have the disease, not knowing that a persistent evil is nestling in this little canal, gnawing at their vitals, and slowly but surely undermining and destroying their sexual vigor and manhood. We know this to be so because we are daily being consulted by men of different ages, who, until our physician, in the course of the examination, showed it to them, never suspected its existence. Many of these men had been doctoring for years for seminal weakness and the like, with varying success, never being quite cured, or, if cured, soon relapsing, all because a varicocele of the cord existed unsuspected and therefore untreated. Figure 11. Complete instrument. Figure 12. Side view. Causes. The causes of this condition of the veins of the bag are very numerous. Some of the most important are masturbation or excess, causing weakening of all the parts, the veins included, falls, blows, strains, excessive horseback and bicycle riding, running, jumping, mumps going to the testicles, gonorrheal inflammation settling there, kick in the groin, wearing of improper trusses, etc., etc. Masturbation is one of the most common of all the causes. In many instances, even if it does not directly cause the complaint, it weakens the parts, so that blows, strains, etc., that in others would not produce any particular trouble, readily cause it in these persons. Symptoms. The symptoms are not many unless it has caused seminal weakness and lost vitality, in which case all the symptoms of these complaints may really be attributed to the varicocele. Pains in the groin, limbs and back, a sense of weight or dragging, neuralgia of the testicles, fetid perspiration, itching and peculiar sensations in the skin of the bag, chafing we cure where cure is possible. In warm weather, easy tiring under rapid walking or running are not uncommon. In some very bad cases, however, none of these symptoms, or only a few, are present. Why, we cannot say. We cure where cure is possible. Prognosis. In itself, this disease is not dangerous. It is from the fact that the veins may go on bulging until an enormous swelling is produced. We have seen cases where the bag hung as low as the knee and was nearly as large around as a man's arm, that the testicles may be entirely wasted away, and that it may cause spermatorrhea, lost manhood, total impotence, and constitute its greatest gravity. Treatment. Cutting and tying operations are exceedingly dangerous, having frequently caused death, and even if successful, the testicles, having their blood supply thus entirely cut off, waste away, and impotence certainly results. Professor Civiale, the great French surgeon, was assassinated by a patient, in whose case he tied the veins on both sides for a double varicocele. Becoming totally impotent, on the very eve of his marriage with a beautiful and accomplished young lady, this man became desperate and attempted the surgeon's life. To effect a cure, the following obstacles must be overcome: weakness and bulging of the walls of the veins, weakness and relaxation of the dartus muscle of the scrotum, overclogging and stagnation of blood in the veins, healing and strengthening of the ruptured and relaxed valves of the veins, relief of the pressure and weight of the column of blood from above. Suspensory bandages are good, because they act as supports. Astringent and tonic washes are good, because they strengthen the weakened veins and muscles and heal the relaxed valves. Proper trusses are good, because they break the great pressure of the blood from above, and act as do the valves in the veins in the groin in health. Also, because they act directly on the disease in cases of varicocele of the cord. But neither one alone will cure a really serious case of varicocele. Combine them, however, properly and scientifically, so that you have the practical outcome of these three sound principles of cure in the one appliance, and any case, no matter how severe or how old, can be permanently and painlessly cured. Such a perfect and practical combination is to be found in the elastic self-adjusting and adjustable cradle and compressor, which has succeeded in curing many very serious and, apparently, hopeless cases. Patented and thoroughly protected from all infringements and imitations, and many would-be ones, seeing our success and recognizing the merits of the cradle compressor, have lately sprung up, both in this country and Europe. There is nothing like it. It combines all the good points of all previous instruments, and being easy to wear, rapid and pleasing in its results, and certain in its effects, is the only rational means for radically curing this disease. Briefly, it consists of a very light and elastic triangle of tempered steel bands that rests on the front of the abdomen, and is held in place by a soft "we hold out no false hopes" silk elastic waistband. In each of the slanting arms of the triangle are small holes that admit the central pivot of a bell pad, having a central spring, and so adjusted that it adapts itself to every movement of the body without being misplaced. By means of a thumb screw in the perforations, the spring bell pad, can be set at any point in the groin, and can be changed from day to day and hour to hour. We hold out no false hopes. By means of pivotal joints at the angles, the appliance can be made to fit any one perfectly. Moreover, by means of the metallic shoulder below, the arms can be thrown into any lateral variation of the groin line. We thus are able to obtain all the marked benefits of a truss without any of its drawbacks, and that special disadvantage, steady and wearisome pressure at one point, is wholly obviated. The whole appliance is held in place below by means of perineal tubular rubber bands that connect with the waist belt behind. Attached to the metallic shoulder below is the elastic, glove-fitting, self-adjusting testicle cradle, by means of which not only are the testicles perfectly supported and rested, but by the sheet rubber lining and the elastic tie bands, a constant, easy and perfectly painless elastic pressure is kept up on the dilated and sagging veins, which are thereby emptied of their unhealthy and stagnated blood and allowed to regain their tone, strength, and contractility. By means of the elastic bands it is easy to regulate the amount of pressure, thereby constantly adapting it to the improvement that is steadily taking place. The compression is so uniform, yet so elastic, that it is absolutely painless, and no motion of the body, however violent, can disarrange it. This, and the fact that the blood can enter and leave the testicle with perfect freedom, constitute some of its most marked advantages over the truss. Moreover, the wearer always feels a sense of rest and relief while wearing the elastic cradle compressor, and from the first day the symptoms of weakness and impotence improve. Being made in different sizes and shapes, and our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. Of the most durable yet softest silk, and powerful yet yielding elastic, they will wear perfectly until long after the varicocele has entirely disappeared. Our treatment is pleasant, quick, and lasting. While it compresses the varicocele, forces out the blood, and allows the veins a chance to regain their strength and proper size again, it simply supports and keeps from injury the testicle, which at once begins to grow larger. In addition to their curative value in varicocele, they are now being extensively used by the medical profession for the relief of the pain and subduing of the inflammation of swelled testicle, also in hydrocele and hematocele. Being applied over the whole scrotum, they will cure a double as readily as a single varicocele. In certain recent or simple cases, the elastic testicle cradle alone will effect a perfect cure. If the case is severe or of long standing, if it involves the cord, or if the sexual organs are affected, the complete instrument should be worn. It is beautifully made and finished, and is strong and durable, yet light and easily worn. Price: Complete instrument, all attachments, $15. Extra, central spring bell pad, in case of double varicocele, $3.00. Elast, IC glove fitting testicle sac and cradle, separate, $6.00. Sold ately boxed, and with full and explicit directions for applying, as also a prescription for a tonic, healing and astringent lotion, to be used, in conjunction with it. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. In ordering, please state girth around waist, circumference of scrotum, and length of same from root of penis to about the middle of the bottom of the bag. The reason why varicocele has until within the past 10 or 15 years received so little attention is owing to the fact that up to that time this bagging or bulging of the spermatic veins was looked upon as merely a local affection. No one seemed to be aware of the fact that its effect in 9 cases out of 10 was to produce seminal weakness and loss of sexual power, etc. Today no fact is so well recognized in medicine, although probably not so well known outside of the profession. Then, too, until very recently, Physicians either carelessly dismissed a patient with varicocele with the advice to get a suspensory bandage and wear it, the thing don't amount to anything. Or else, when the patient became persistent in his demands for a cure, advised him that the dangerous cutting or tying operations were the only means of relief. But this is all changed now. Physicians have come to know something about the disease, and means for both relief and cure are now speedy and certain, and in no sense painful or dangerous. It is for the purpose of stating in as plain and concise a manner as possible all the more important facts relating to this disease, and pointing out to such as are troubled with it, or have friends so troubled, not only the proper manner of treatment, but also the danger of delay, that this little treatise has been compiled. Many a man well built and apparently healthy, yet totally bereft of manhood, in a word impotent, can trace his deplorable condition to a neglected varicocele. Nor are these the only ones who need information upon the subject. Thousands of young men are today being treated for seminal troubles who will never be cured, because they are entirely ignorant of the existence of a varicocele of the cord, that most insidious and dangerous of all forms of varicocele, or, if aware of it, do not understand the terrible influence it has on their sexual powers, and how great and persistent a stumbling block it will be in the way of all treatment. It is for the benefit of all such that this little essay is intended. For the sake of clearness, we shall consider the subject under the heads of definition, frequency, causes, dangers, influence on sexual diseases, wasting of the organs, symptoms and treatment. Consultation with our physicians, by letter or in person, free, references and testimonials promptly and cheerfully furnished. Civiale Remedial Agency, 174 Fulton Street, New York. We offer special help to impotent men. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. The reliability of the Civiale remedies, and the business standing and probity of our agency. In previous editions of this work, we made no attempt whatever to point out to our readers either our reputation as a medical business firm, or proofs of the efficacy or reliability of the remedies we represent and prescribe, supposing that any person at all familiar with the names and reputation of Professors Lallemand and Civiale, and the honors bestowed upon the latter by the French government, would need no such references, etc. We find, however, that there are but few men in this country who are as familiar as they should be with the nature and extent of Lallmand's and Civiale's medical labors, or indeed with French medical history at all. We, therefore, for the benefit of such, have here transcribed extracts from that most reliable work, Appleton's Cyclopedia, copies of which may be found in many families, and every town and city library, from which may be learned the professional standing and reputation of these great men. Furthermore, of late years there have sprung up in various parts of the country physicians and firms who have made it a business to prey upon foolish young men, who took everything that was sent to them for gospel. There are many young men, and old men too, who do not know us, and for their benefit we have drawn up here and submitted such proofs of our probity, fair dealing and medical capacity, as well as of the reliability of the Civiale remedies, as will, we believe, carry conviction of our truthfulness and probity to any honest man's mind. We have always been averse to parading before the eyes of the careless, scoffing world the sufferings of the victims of abuse or excess, even when by doing so we might profit largely by such a course. We have a large number of letters from persons who have been cured by this treatment constantly on file in our office, and any sufferer really in earnest will be gladly given permission to examine them, should he so desire. But we certainly shall not parade such letters, written to us in the strictest confidence and secrecy, to every reader of a treatise of this kind, especially when we give an abundance of equally as good proof of another kind. If we have always dealt fairly and with professional honor and ability with our corresponding and office patients in the past, we certainly shall continue to do so in the future. First, let us call your attention to two very recent and very flattering extracts from editorial articles that appeared in newspapers of known standing and reputation in the city of New York, both of which articles were wholly unsolicited by us, being the spontaneous testimony of wholly disinterested journals. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. Testimonials and endorsements. Testimonials and endorsements. From the medical and lay press of this country and France. a notable medical institution. From the New York Tribune and Farmer, NOV. 22, 1884. It is a well-recognized fact by writers upon longevity that the men of the present day, both old and young, are less manly and vigorous, less able to resist the attacks of acute disease, and not only less likely to produce healthy and vigorous offspring, but in the majority of instances producing a fewer number as well as a less vigorous and robust progeny. The ratio of births to deaths has fallen off some 12% in births in the past 15 years. This fact, coupled with the equally startling consideration that the mortality of infants has increased about 11% in the past 10 years, must needs fill the mind of a lover of his kind with dismay and alarm. Although invested and thickly hedged about by ideas of false modesty and pseudo-propriety, in reality the whole fabric of national and individual prosperity, health, vigor, and enjoyment, as well as the very important perpetuation of our species, depend upon perfectly strong, healthy, and vigorous procreative powers. As an oak cannot grow from a flower seed, either can weak, puny, and debilitated parents give birth to strong, vigorous, and mentally sound and active progeny. The subject of procreative pathology deserves more careful and extended study and observation than the majority of our physicians have heretofore been inclined to give it. Most of them have let the more numerous and oftentimes the more trivial cases daily coming under their notice crowd this most serious matter from sight, and when applied to for advice or treatment by sufferers from these disorders or debilities, have either pooh-poohed it or have given some simple, or useless, placebo, believing the trouble to be more imaginary than real. Is it any wonder, then, that such patients have walked blindfold into the arms of quacks and charlatans who profess the most tender interest in even their minutest symptoms? We have been led to make the foregoing remarks by what we have just finished reading in a very interesting and able work upon this subject recently issued from the press of the Civiale Remedial Agency, of 174 Fulton Street, this city. The subject matter of this book cannot fail to interest every man, young or old, and must prove of special interest to men just married, and to that large all our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the County Clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Class of middle-aged men who find to their surprise and chagrin that while their bodily health is apparently excellent, their procreative powers have prematurely declined. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the County Clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. The fact of the establishment in this city of an original institution under reputable business management, each department of which is presided over by a physician of special skill and qualifications, is something of which every citizen should feel proud. And to judge by the class of patients who may be found in their elegant consulting rooms, and the very large amount of express and mail matter they are constantly receiving, we believe that they are appreciated. With our magnificent hospitals, second to none in the world, our large medical colleges and dispensaries, and the establishment of so large and excellent an institution as the Civiale Agency, the main offices being now transferred from Paris to this city, New York may justly claim to be the great medical center of the United States, and sooner or later of the world. We maintain now, as we have always maintained, that the surest and best way to drive quacks and humbugs from any branch of medicine is to have some of our very ablest and most honorable physicians make such a branch their specialty, and such is the course now being pursued by the Civiale Agency. The very fact that it takes its name from and is engaged in manufacturing and prescribing the remedies of France's most illustrious specialist, Professor Jean Civiale, is by itself evidence enough of its medical value and professional integrity. Our feelings upon these matters, i.e., the great importance of their bearing upon both individual and national vigor and prosperity, the necessity for driving from this field of practice those quacks and humbugs who entrap the foolish and ignorant, those cheap and worthless remedies that flood the drug market, our feelings upon these matters are, we repeat, very strong, and hence, when we find an institution for the treatment of these diseases conducted upon the highest moral, medical, and business principles by men of undoubted medical and business standing and integrity, we feel that we cannot endorse them too heartily. The Tribune and Farmer, of New York City, in its current issue of July 26, 1884, says, "An exception to the rule. The propriety of devoting editorial space to the subject matter of any medical advertisement that may appear in our columns may be doubted by some, and indeed, were it not for our personal knowledge of the skill and integrity of the medical director of the Civiale Remedial Agency of New York, whose advertisements will be found elsewhere in this issue, we should deem ourselves more than guilty were we to utter a word of endorsement as to the efficacy of their system of treating that serious class of diseases in men which has been generically termed nervous debility, and which for so many years has been, and is at present, made the stalking horse for impudent swindlers, quacks, and impostors to palm off worthless and often injurious compounds on their suffering fellowmen. Our crayons are inserted without pain. Our crayons are inserted without pain. Let it be understood, then, that we know whereof we speak, and that our object is simply to furnish those who are afflicted with such reliable information as will enable them to determine the true character of their disease, and the best means to be adopted for a cure. The method of treating diseases of the genitourinary organs by means of the urethral canal is in the first place no newfangled experiment, but is identical with the system which has been employed for the past 15 years in the leading hospitals of France, and more especially in Paris, as the standard treatment, and one that gives uniform satisfaction. And in the history of medical science there are perhaps no two physicians who have done more for the alleviation of human suffering and the cure of sexual and seminal diseases than those eminent French surgeons, Professor Jean Civiale and Professor Claude Lallemand, to whose joint studies and endeavors this system owes its origin. We believe, in fact, that this theory and practice of medicine is an advance in the right direction, and we predicted, from its first introduction in the United States some time ago, that the people would readily see its truth and accept the wonderful benefits of its practice. And the result has certainly borne out our prediction, for thousands of sufferers from such ills as impotence, spermatorrhea, kidney, liver, and urinary troubles have been cured by these remedies. The following is a list of the French hospitals with which Civiale and Lallemand were connected during their lives: Hôtel Dieu, La Pitie, La Charite, Lariboisière, St. Antoine, Hôpital Necker, Hôpital Cochin, Hôpital St. Louis, Hôpital du Midi, Hôpital Lorraine, La Modernite, Hospice Bicêtre, Hôtel Dieu, La Pitie, La Charite, Lariboisière, St. Antoine, Hôpital Necker, Hôpital Cochin, Hôpital St. Louis, Hôpital du Midi, Hôpital Lorraine, La Modernite, Hospice Bicêtre, Lallemand, Civiale, Dupuytren. We cure where a cure is possible. We next give extracts from Appleton's Cyclopedia, to which reference has already been made. Lallemand, Claude François. Civiale, Jean C. Stone. Medical Academy. Legion of Honor. We hold out no false hopes. We also take pleasure in referring, not as patients, but simply as to standing, probity, business capacity, and the ability of our consulting staff, to the following firms or gentlemen in this city: West Side Pharmacy, dealers in drugs, chemicals, and C. Corner Hudson and Charlton Streets. West Side Pharmacy. Coffin and Rogers, 85 John Street, New York. Coffin and Rogers. American Drug Company, Islip, Long Island. American Drug Company. Editor of the New York Tribune and Farmer. Editor of the New York Tribune and Farmer. E. Duncan Sniffen, 3 Park Row. E. Duncan Sniffen. A characteristic letter. For once we transgress our rule, never to put a debility patient's letter in print unless the patient urges us to do so, and do it at the request of our medical chief of staff, and with the patient's full consent. The name, however, we omit, simply stating that should any intending patient desire to come and see or send some friend living in the city, to see and verify that letter and many more like it, we shall be most happy to oblige them. Rodney, Miss. August 14, 1884. Rodney, Miss. Dear Sirs, my course of treatment being almost all used, I feel it my duty to state to you my present condition, and I can say without hesitation that I am almost a new man, and I thank God that improvement has been so thorough and rapid, may it be but lasting. Sexual desire is now perfect, erections are perfect, Emissions come at the right time, oozing of vital fluid at stools and in the urine has stopped. I rest well at night with the exception I shall state further on. Appetite is good and digestion almost perfect. I can now approach the presence of the opposite sex with some satisfaction to myself. Ambition is returning, and in fact a whole new lease of life seems suddenly to have been allotted to me. The varicocele has almost disappeared. I cannot say enough in praise for this beautiful little appliance. The cradle compressor. Now, if it were not for the urinary disorder which still remains, I should call myself well. That this remains, however, is no fault of the crayons, and could the course number 3 have reached me undamaged by heat, as did the course number 2, I have not the least doubt I should now be well. The symptoms of this disorder, still present, are dreams at night, not nervous ones as before, but still unpleasant, mucus oozing after straining. Also in the morning on rising I find the lips of organ glued, and on forcing apart a drop of this mucus fluid makes its appearance. I have no doubt whatever that had crayons reached me perfectly, this disorder would have been conquered same as the other. Now, in your little circular you guarantee a cure. In all cases wherein your medical examiner decides a cure is possible. Now this certainly holds good in my case. Please let me know what you are willing to do about the matter, for I certainly need another course of number 3 crayons, and if you would furnish them in place of the ones destroyed in transit, I should consider your guarantee fulfilled. The course you sent me last could not be used at all. They were 10 times worse than the first ones, and I only wasted them in trying to use same. However, do not send any crayons till you hear from me, and I think the weather cool enough, as they would only be wasted again. Could you our treatment is pleasant, quick and lasting. Furnish me, and at what price, a suspensory, such as you would recommend. If not, where could I get one? I think it advisable to wear one after laying aside the compressor, as I have to be on my feet all the time. Our treatment is pleasant, quick and lasting. Please excuse encroachment on your time and believe me ever. Yours very truly, Singer. Yours very truly, Singer. Double varicocele and spermatorrhea radically cured. These letters are published at the patient's own request, and he will be most happy to correspond with any earnest and honest inquirer. Tired of humbugging. Islip, Suffolk County, NY. Islip. Manager of the Civiale Remedial Agency. 174 Fulton Street, New York. Dear Sir, my attention has been several times called to your method of curing varicocele of the bag without any cutting or tying, and I am now going to describe my case to you, and get your idea whether you can cure me or not. I would have done this long ago if I hadn't been afraid of being humbugged, as I often have been by doctors and men who said they could cure me right off without any pain or trouble. But they all fooled me out of my money, and that's all. But I'm going to try once more, and please tell me if you think my case is too bad for your compress and cradle. I'm pretty badly off, I know, but it seems to me that this thing ought to be able to be cured by someone. This is how mine was. 8 or 9 years ago I fell from the rigging of a schooner, and was laid up for nearly 16 weeks with a broken thigh. I also had both testicles terribly sore and swollen, and it was a long time after my leg got well before I was able to walk. The pain in the groin, testicles and small of my back was so bad. Sometimes, even when I was sitting quiet, it would cut me like the stab of a knife. The first I noticed of the varicocele was one day when I was taking a bath. I saw there was a sort of bulging there, and come to notice it closer, it felt just like a bunch of angleworms all twisted together. I tried cold water to it, and wore a suspension bag for a long time, but it didn't do much good. At first it didn't trouble me much in winter, but was bad in summer. Now it's bad all the time, and I don't believe I could walk half a mile without I wore a supporter. I have tried most everything I ever heard of, but it's no use. Some of the things helped me for a while, but they didn't last, and now I'm pretty well discouraged, for I don't dare have it operated on, not so much that I'm afraid of the pain, but because a young man I knew went to a hospital in New York to be operated on, and died, because the veins got inflamed from the cutting and tying. I am willing to pay anyone a fair price for curing me, because as I am now I can't do a fair day's work, and my testes are wasting away very fast. But I don't want any more humbugging, and if you treat me, You have got to give me good proofs that you can do as you say. Truly yours, D.L.B. Truly yours, D.L.B. I forgot to say that my varicocele is on both sides, but the left side is much the worse. It is twice as bulgy as the other. When you are tired of being humbugged or experimented on, send to us. Just as represented. Islip, New York. Dear Sir, I went to the depot night before last and got the package all right, and when I got up yesterday morning, bathed as the circular said, and put the cradle and compressor on me. I write to tell you how pleased I am. I always felt sure someone would find a cure for this thing, and believe I've got hold of the right thing at last, though I'm not going to crow this time till I'm part way out of the woods at least. Anyway, I'm satisfied so far. The appliance is just what it was represented, and I find that it fits me to a T, and is the most easy and comfortable thing I ever wore. I haven't had a bit of pain since I put it on yesterday morning, and I have done some hard work these 2 days, purposely twisting and wrenching my body about to see if I would get it out of place. So far it is all right, and I am very thankful to you, for if it never cured me it would be a godsend to wear for relief of that horrid dead ache and dragging pain in my groin and back. I shall want some of your crayons soon, and will write again in a few weeks. Please tell me how long the wash ought to stand before it is strained, and whether it would hurt me to use it twice a day instead of once. Very respectfully, D.L.B. Very respectfully, D.L.B. Perfectly cured. Islip, Suffolk County, N.Y., February 13, 1884. Islip. Dear Sir, it is now over 2 months since I quit wearing the cradle compressor, and I seat myself to tell you that the varicocele seems to be entirely well. The left side is a trifle larger than the right, but the veins are not wormy as they used to be, and the blood don't stagnate in them any more. The dragging pain is all gone away, and the small of my back hasn't pained me for a long time. When I came to see you in New York, your doctor told me I mustn't feel sure that I was cured until every bit of worminess was gone and the canal was free of swelled veins. You can tell him that this is so now, and that the testicles aren't shrunk and wasted the way they used to be. Our doctor here, who told me I couldn't be cured unless I had it operated on, says it's the most remarkable thing he ever saw. Those are his very words. He didn't seem any too chipper to find out he was wrong about having to get cut. I am 1,000 times grateful to you. You have made me a man again, and I shall not forget it. I am ashamed to think how mean a letter I wrote you last summer about humbugging and the like, but I apologize now, and if you find any other people that don't feel sure you can cure them, send them this letter or get them to write to me. I shall remember all you wrote in your last letter about not presuming too much on my improvement, and to be careful about jumping, straining and lifting hard, and the like. The crayons did their work just as well as the compress instrument, and I never can tell you how grateful I am to you. There's several men I know here that are going to write you about their cases. One of them is going down on the train tomorrow, and will bring this letter with him, he says, for introduction. Goodbye. Yours respectfully and gratefully, David L. B. Yours respectfully and gratefully, David L. B. We offer special help to impotent men. Remarks. The foregoing 3 letters tell their story plainly and concisely, and need little or no explanation. We only desire to append the following note from our case book. D.B. Residence, Bay Shore, Suffolk County, Long Island, N.Y. Age 54, sex, male, civil condition, widower, occupation, track walker on L.I. Railroad, formerly bayman and sailor, disease, double varicocele, most pronounced on the left side, glands much softened and wasted, cord also varicose and very painful. Complication, impaired powers, losses and commencing impotence. Cause, indirect and contributive abuse in earlier years. Direct, fall from rigging of a vessel. Treatment, medium cradle and inguinal compressor, and 1 No. 2 course Civiale's soluble crayons. Result, perfect cure in about 9 months. Remarks, as severe and complicated a case as can be found in any records. The symptoms of impotence were undoubtedly due to the pressure of the dilated veins on the testicles and the scrotum, and the seminal duct in the inguinal canal. Patient promises to report, in person, at the end of 6 months, to determine whether the cure remains perfect. Mr. B has since moved to Islip, Long Island, where letters of inquiry, containing a stamp for reply, will reach him. Residence. Age. Civil condition. Occupation. Disease. Complication. Cause. Direct. Treatment. Result. Remarks. Consultation. If you should conclude to place your case in our hands, we shall be pleased to hear from you, and promise you the most careful and thorough attention. Our consulting staff is large, each physician has his special department to attend to, and each case is afterwards reviewed by the whole board, so as to avoid all possibility of error and give each sufferer the benefit of the highest skill and research. Our patients, while numerous, are not such a multitude but that we can and do give each one of them individually the closest attention. Should it be convenient for you to visit us in person, you will be cordially welcomed. If you hesitate from ordering, from any cause, we shall be pleased to correspond with you. We try to feel as if we have a personal acquaintance with every patient, and treat him as a valued friend, and whether you ever order or not, we shall be glad to hear from you and know your conclusions on this subject. Of course, every letter is sacredly private. No one reads these but the manager, and even our old and trusted medical advisors do not know the names of our patients. Only the numbers and descriptions of cases go into their hands. As a further assurance, we destroy letters, or return them to the writers, whichever they prefer. We solicit your influence with your friends, and will be ready to reciprocate such favors. You will also be often doing such friends a favor, for which they will always thank you. We shall be particularly pleased to hear from men advanced in years, who feel the necessity of counteracting growing weakness incident to their age, and who know the worst and folly of resorting to pernicious secret preparations, the effect of which is to give unnatural stimulation for a brief time, to be followed by a dangerous, perhaps fatal, reaction. Strictest privacy, perfect confidence, certain cure. To the medical profession. We make special terms on our instruments and treatment to physicians, and cordially invite them to correspond with us. We will do all in our power to serve the profession to their satisfaction. We have the benefit of the best medical advice and facilities in certain lines not attainable from any other source on the continent. General practitioners and family physicians. We cannot refrain, before closing this chapter, from saying a word or two about the incompetency of the large majority of general practitioners and family physicians, and their evident carelessness, and in some instances, even disgust, in the diagnosis and treatment of this class of cases. The readers of this may be among that class who think that family physician, the embodiment of medical wisdom, and that if he has failed to cure the case or pooh-poohed it away, there is no hope. But no one MD, however learned, knows all about the ills of flesh. In this, as in the legal and other learned professions, a man may practice a score of years, and still know little or nothing about various peculiar cases, because they don't come under his notice. He has no opportunity to study them practically, and little inducement to theorize. And the class of cases we are now considering, it may surprise the sufferer to know, are deemed by many, regular, physicians beneath their attention. The physician's calling is a noble one, and he justly takes a high ground regarding his duties. We honor the scruples of our medical friends, but we do not understand nor approve the spirit which leads them to meet these cases with ridicule or evasive answers. That they do thus meet this class of cases, and that their course is censured by the most eminent of the profession, we have abundant evidence. One of the best known medical writers of England, F. B. Courtenay, member of the Royal College of Surgeons, etc., says in one of his works, True and False Spermatorrhea, pages 20 to 21. Again, some medical men affect to consider these cases objectionable, and on these grounds seek to avoid them. Others boldly declare that as most of such cases are the result of unnatural and immoral habits, the sufferers are justly punished for their conduct, and are unworthy of the attention and sympathy of any one. Now I conceive this to be a monstrous fallacy, for surely it is entirely beyond the scope of any medical man's duty to sit in judgment on the applicants for his professional services. According to my idea of professional duty, every man is bound to do all in his power to afford relief to every sufferer who seeks it at his hands, without question as to the causes and nature of the malady. Speaking of one of his patients, the same writer says, he had consulted one of the most eminent members of the medical profession, and this gentleman evidently listened to his narration of his case with great impatience and indifference, and upon the conclusion of his history handed him a prescription, saying, "There, take that for 6 weeks, and if it does not do you any good, I don't know what will." The interpretation: all our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Patient put on his conduct, and the remarks was, that he need not trouble himself to call again. All our doctors are regular graduates, and their diplomas are registered in the office of the county clerk, City Hall, New York, as required by law. Now, I have the pleasure of personally knowing the professional gentleman here referred to, and during the last 20 years have been in the constant habit of meeting him in consultation, and I am sure, from my knowledge of him, that his behavior resulted from no intentional unkindness on his part, but solely from the unfortunate feeling of reluctance to attend to such cases, which, both from my own observations and from information obtained from patients, I know to be entertained by too many members of the profession. I am well aware that patients of this class are often most tedious in the narration of their cases, that the details they conceive themselves bound to enter upon are most painful, not to say disgusting, to hear. Nevertheless, we must, as in many other instances in the discharge of our duties, submit with patience, taking the rough and smooth with the same equanimity. And in the special cases in question, we should endeavor to forget the patient's vices and his woes. Another distinguished physician writes, I cannot disregard the appeals of unhappy and humiliated people. Men have come to me who were ashamed to show their organs because of their diminutiveness, and who practiced masturbation and lived in celibacy rather than bear the humiliation of exposure of the parts. Nothing can be more pitiable than such a condition. If these very moral and dainty practitioners, who, as Dr. Cornay says, affect to consider these cases objectionable, and the sufferers unworthy of the attention or sympathy of any one, if these moralists could sit at our desk, and day after day, week after week, read the affecting stories of enforced celibacy, shattered health, broken family ties, the anguish of jealousy, despair, misanthropy, the consciousness of physical, mental and moral inferiority begotten by this sad condition, we think that then these gentlemen would agree with us that medical science and philanthropy can have no higher object than the saving of these wrecks. Our patients' letters and testimonials, our correspondents are candid, they cannot well afford to be otherwise, and it is seldom we read one of their letters without feeling all the interest in the writer that one can for an honest suffering fellow being. We would not feel this interest did they not evince an earnest desire to profit by their misfortunes. Our aid is not sought by those wishing a brute's power for excesses, for we hold out no inducements to this class, but plainly tell them that they will inevitably pay the penalty for abuse of nature's laws. Nor are our patrons among the vicious and imaginative youth, or the class termed greenhorns. We confine our advertising almost wholly to the daily press, thus reaching the most intelligent class of citizens only. We regret that, for obvious reasons, we cannot present some of the letters we have received from those who have been treated by our method. We are pledged to secrecy with our correspondents, however, and cannot use their names publicly. We cannot publish testimonials. Although we have scores of such a nature as to satisfy the most incredulous, yet all must understand that it would be a breach of confidence on our part to make these public, and would our crayons are inserted without paying ruin our practice besides, as we can only do business of this nature under guarantee of strict privacy. But of the many hundreds we have successfully treated, a number have voluntarily given us permission to refer to them in correspondence with interested parties. Our crayons are inserted without paying. We will cheerfully furnish, on conditions named below, a list of some of the persons who have taken this mode of treatment, been thoroughly developed in size and strength of the organs, and relieved of every trace of seminal disease or weakness, and from gratitude and good hearts have volunteered to answer any questions addressed to them by interested persons, who are, of course, expected to hold such correspondence confidential. Bear in mind that we use these names only by permission, which was given us unsought by patrons who paid for our services, and now tender this privilege more through kindness to sufferers than a desire to benefit us financially. To save these gentlemen annoyance and useless correspondence, we prefer not to furnish their names except to those who have had previous correspondence with us and who will accompany the request with references. Bashfulness and false modesty. We are sorry to note in some of our patrons a feeling of shame in taking this treatment. Such feeling we cannot but regard as absurd, and the outgrowth of false ideas. If their present condition has been brought on by evil habits, it is well enough to be ashamed of that fact, but it is certainly altogether creditable to make use of the first opportunity to restore or attain a perfectly natural condition and check such disastrous losses, and in many cases it is absolutely necessary for the welfare and happiness of themselves and others. A well-known medical writer says, "This treatment does not interfere with any regular habits or employment, and may be followed without the knowledge or suspicion of any person whatever. It is beneficial to the general health and quite pleasant in its effects, giving the person a rejuvenated, buoyant feeling, infusing new life and manhood, seemingly dashing young strong blood through all the sluggish veins and arteries of the form. To those who really need this treatment its importance cannot be overestimated. Each sufferer can answer to himself how very different life would be if free from his infirmity. Would you not be better capacitated for business, labor, or pleasure? Is not your mind on the rack often, perhaps always? Have you not at this time, and in consequence of this deficiency, a tendency to misanthropy, a bitter feeling that you are the victim of an unkind providence, or else bowed by humiliation due to your own ignorance or vices? Does not your very incapacity keep your mind filled with lewd thoughts, which in a state of perfect manhood would not exist? From the confession of hundreds we know how each of you will answer most or all of these questions. Is not the means, then, which will raise you above these deplorable conditions, a blessing inestimable? Is it not an agent of moral as well as physical regeneration? When this means of deliverance is offered, will you hesitate in availing yourself of its benefits and making it known to others who are sufferers like yourself? Let an honest heart and candid judgment answer for you. We cure where a cure is possible. The fallacy of cheap remedies. There are many men who are affected more or less seriously with diseases of the sexual organs who are constantly on the lookout for so-called cheap remedies, and in the course of a few years manage to spend upon these cheap and trashy medicines and appliances twice or three times as much money as would have been necessary to thoroughly cure them. And what have they got to show for it? Nothing, absolutely nothing, even worse than nothing, i.e., positive injury to the organs, for, in 9 cases out of 10, these cheap, claptrap potions, by overstimulating, imitating and often inflaming the organs, do them actual harm, hasten and aggravate the disease and leave the patient in a much worse condition than if he had taken no treatment at all. How often have we had cases referred to us for diagnosis and treatment, where irreparable injury had been done by wrong treatment? Some were in such a state that no treatment, however excellent, could possibly help them. In others we have had to labor for months to eliminate these poisonous medicines from the system and get the sexual organs into proper condition to admit of a restorative treatment. And in still others the effect of our usually quick and thoroughgoing remedies were delayed and interfered with by the ignorance or botchwork of some quack or bungler, or the well-meant but stupid doctoring of some family physician, who thinks himself competent to treat these diseases. No more delicate, complicated or easily injured or disarranged piece of mechanism than the sexual organs exists. In health, they must be treated with care and reason; in disease, with the utmost circumspection. This branch of medicine, least of all, should be the parade ground of ignorance, carelessness or false economy. A man's very health, life, happiness and vigor, his power to procreate his species, to perpetuate his name, his ability to make his wife happy and his children strong and vigorous, all depend upon the treatment he selects. What is worth doing at all is worth doing well, and he who jeopardizes health and happiness, present and future, on the mistaken basis of false economy, is far from wise. Everything has a value. If a man offers to sell to another a gold watch worth $150 for $5, you would at once set him down as an impostor, and the watch as injured or worthless or fraudulent. Yet there are thousands of men who try to find for a few dollars a remedy for a most serious and complicated disease. In medicine, as elsewhere, common sense plays an important part. Such remedies cannot possibly do what is claimed for them. Reputable, honest men, educated and skilled physicians who have spent thousands of dollars in obtaining a proper medical education, cannot afford to waste their time for such slight remuneration. Hence, unscrupulous scoundrels, who have no reputations either to make or lose, who make most glaring promises in their printed matter, who are willing to guarantee anything to anybody, infest this field. They know how great is man's cupidity, and trade upon it willingly, caring nothing for the consequences. We hold out no false hopes. Our remedies are reliable and reasonable. We not speak thus disparagingly of cheap remedies because ours are dear, for no patient who has gone the round of cheap remedies, and has at last profited by Civiale's method, but will tell you that our treatment is cheap at any price. We charge what we consider a fair and reasonable profit on our remedies. Our entire institution is conducted on the very highest and most ethical medical basis. The physicians comprising our consulting staff are men of the best standing, of fine education, and having special experience in this branch of medical science. Our remedies are made up under the direct personal supervision of one of the most expert chemists in this country, and precisely after Civiale's formulae. Our drugs are purchased from such firms as McKesson and Robbins, Schieffelin, etc., and are of the purest and best, and our aim at all times is to give the patient consulting us the full value of his money. For such skill and services we charge fairly and reasonably, and we have yet to find a patient who is dissatisfied. Our cases get well, provided our advice is followed and a cure is possible. If it is not, we frankly and candidly tell the truth. We cannot afford to make false statements or false promises, to hold out hopes we cannot justify, to ruin our established and well-known reputation for honesty, fair dealing and medical skill in order to make a few dollars. We find that one man cured is the very best advertisement we can have, and that one such case makes us one warm friend and advocate, and brings us many patients, where one man deceived and defrauded would make us one bitter enemy and injure us in the eyes of many. Thus, every other consideration of honor and honesty aside, it pays us better to deal fairly with our patrons. This treatment has been thoroughly tried in the most desperate and adverse cases, and has stood the test of time and repeated trials, has stood these tests as no other remedy or remedies ever have or ever will, and in them men of all ages and all conditions may find strength, health and vigor. The Civiale Remedial Agency. Main Offices and Laboratory. 174 Fulton Street, New York City. Please address all medical and business letters to offices, 174 Fulton Street. They may be addressed to Civiale Agency or Mr. L. B. Jones, our business manager. Civiale Agency. From the New Orleans Weekly Picayune, May 23, 1885. Civiale Remedial Agency. Every man, whether he be young, middle-aged, or old, suffering from weakness, debility, or impotency, will be made healthy and happy by writing to this excellent concern, at 174 Fulton Street, New York. The advertisement should be read, which will show skeptics that the agency is worthy of confidence. The press and medical profession endorse the gentlemen connected with it in strong terms. Civiale Remedial Agency. A special and important announcement. A special and important announcement. Strict morality versus false modesty. In preparing both the first and later editions of this little work, that has brought happiness to so many by opening the way to knowledge of a proper means of cure and methods of regaining health and vigor, the utmost care and circumspection have been exercised in an endeavor to exclude from its pages anything that could be construed by the most fastidious as immodest, obscene, or in any way offensive to decency, morality, or good breeding. Indeed, although purely and essentially a medical work, and intended solely for such persons whose duty it is to be acquainted with the facts given, in order to understand their complaint, to place themselves under proper treatment, and to avoid the dangers of quackery. We have in many instances wholly excluded or materially modified the wording of passages in order to comply with our original ideas of the strictest purity of thought and speech commensurate with a truthful and honest statement of facts. We wish it distinctly understood that this treatise is intended solely for persons suffering from genitourinary diseases, and that it is never mailed to any person who has not voluntarily requested us to send it, and then not to boys or to members of the opposite sex. Our application books show a large number of such refusals. We look upon our special mission in the field of medicine as distinct, laudable, and holy. There are those who look down upon this special branch of medicine, and some ignoramuses who assert that such diseases only exist in the imaginations of such patients as a result of reading the pamphlets of quacks who paint frightful pictures of insanity, idiocy, etc. To such men as these we have only this to say: consult the works of Hammond, Black, Acton, Wilson, Lallemand, Civiale, Courtney, Lee, etc., the authors of which have worldwide reputations, not only as physicians, but as truthful, honest, and moral men. They will then see how really grave are such affections and how needful of aid. God knows that the misery, despondency, and actual organic disease, as a result of early vices, are prevalent enough even today to make a lover of his fellow men sincerely pity and desire to help them. And we claim, and every honest man cannot but admit, that it is only by the widespread dissemination of a knowledge of certain facts to young and old, especially the former, that such vice and its consequences can be met and overcome. We are daily spreading such knowledge throughout the length and breadth of this land, not only warning and advising the young and cautioning the older, but also pointing out to all such as needed a perfect and easy means of cure and restoration to health and vigor. Our mission is as real, noble, and important as that of preaching the gospel, and aside from its bearing on the enlightenment of those who would otherwise go astray, and offering the means of relief to those who have already sinned against nature, it is of a broader and even more sweeping importance. As every whole must needs be the sum total of its integrals, so each nation and people must, in mental, moral, and physical traits, be that which its individual members make it. Hence, if perfect general health, full procreative ability, and healthy offspring mark the majority of the individuals, so naturally must the health, vigor, populousness, and power of the nation be accordingly. As secret vice diminishes, public virtue and morality become greater. Diseases of the prostate gland, urinary organs, and sexual apparatus are as real, as embarrassing, and as needful of cure as those of the lungs, heart, stomach, or any other organ, indeed, more important, for the latter only affect the life or health of the individual immediately concerned, while the former concern not only the person affected, but his offspring also. There is no reason why false modesty or pseudo-delicacy should reign supreme here. If the Almighty had intended these matters to be viewed and treated in the light which some fanatics and extremists seem to desire, we would certainly have been created without the power of procreation entirely. As it is, such organs and such diseases do exist, are of the greatest, individual and national, importance, and provided a full knowledge of the causes and consequences of vice and abuse as related to these parts can be brought vividly and strongly before the mind of every man, young or old, in a chaste, decent, and strictly professional manner, the result can only be a good one. And those who deny it are engaged in moral hair-splitting. We felt that the foregoing remarks were both apropos and necessary with a view to contradicting some statements recently made regarding the uselessness and demoralizing effects of everything concerning this branch of medical practice, and as due ourselves in distinctly recording our belief and practice in the matter. More especially to refute the false accusation that special medical treatises were being scattered broadcast over the land and made to invade the privacy of homes, and coming into the hands of young boys and females. The Civiale Remedial Agency.